Today's broadcast is brought to you by ClassicBaseballBroadcasts.com, your one-stop destination for thousands of authentic, vintage radio game broadcasts, interviews and highlights. Red Barber, Mel Allen, Vin Scully, Ernie Harwell, Kurt Godey are just a few of the Ford Frick Award-winning voices. There are hundreds more that will bring back childhood memories from back in the day when the game was always on. From the crack of the bat to the roar of the crowd, relive the moments that made Baseball America's favorite pastime. Get started for free and step back in time listening to baseball's greatest moments.
From Seattle, Washington, and it's time for the championship game of the National Collegiate Athletic Association, being played here in Seattle, Washington, in Edmondson Pavilion on the campus of the University of Washington. The broadcast is being sent your way through the cooperation of Purcell's of Lexington and Dixie Ice Cream, the cream of the bluegrass. Well, the game to decide the third and fourth place of the NCAA, the runners-up in the Eastern Playoff and the runners-up in the Western Playoff. Illinois, which was defeated in the finals in Madison Square Garden in New York City Tuesday night, and Oregon State, which lost to the Oklahoma Aggies, the Oklahoma A&M Aggies, met tonight to decide the third and fourth positions in the nation. And the victor was the Illini by a 57-53 score. Illinois was on top by 28-19 at the halftime. And in the second half, the Beavers of Oregon State came scrapping back and went on top the lead in the closing minutes of the game. But Illinois finally found the right combination when again Don Sunderlich seemed to be the spark that clicked, and Illinois won 57-53. Sunderlich making quite a name for himself again, this time out in Seattle. Of course, you may remember just the first of this week on Monday night in New York City, it was Don Sunderlich who played a whale of a basketball game and pulled one out of the fire for Illinois when they met the Eli's from Yale in the opening game. Well, basketball fans were still waiting for the Kentucky Wildcats and the Oklahoma A&M Cowboys to appear on the floor for their warm-ups here in Edmondson Pavilion in Seattle, Washington. While we're waiting for the game to get underway, I want to remind you that just as there are many people in the public eye at Purcell's, there are many people behind the scenes, people whom you never see and yet are absolutely indispensable to a smooth-working organization. Purcell's feel that they deserve credit too, and so tonight, Purcell's pays tribute to these non-selling members of their organization. And just as the buyers and department heads are specialists in their line, so is the non-selling personnel, each and every one a specialist. Well, the smattering of applause that you may have heard throughout Edmondson Pavilion here in Seattle is for the Kentucky Wildcats who've just made their initial appearance on the pavilion floor. The traveling squad, which is down to 10 now, to appear here tonight in Seattle, includes Alex Groza, Cliff Barker, Roger Day, Johnny Stow. But just a minute, let us give you all of the boys who made the trip here to Seattle. There was Alex Groza, Jim Line, Wallace Jones, Ralph Beard, and Cliff Barker to comprise the first five. And from there it was Walt Hirsch, Dale Barnstable, Roger Day, Johnny Stow, and Al Bruno, the 10 Kentucky varsity members that made the trip from New York City after knocking off the Big Ten champs Illinois. And coming to Seattle, the 10 with Coach Adolph Rupp and Harry Lancaster, of course, trainer Bud Berger, manager Humza Yessin, and yours truly to represent the radio angle for the Bluegrass. The Aggies are on the floor, too, displaying their manpower, and it may be just that. We'll probably see one of the greatest college basketball games of all time. That seems to be the general sentiment among all the basketball fans that we've had a chance to contact in our short while here in Seattle. Say, basketball fans, are you planning on having guests anytime real soon? Say, maybe tomorrow night? Well, you'll be a popular hostess if you serve delicious, nutritious Dixie ice cream. Solve your dessert problems this easy, economical way. Include Dixie, the cream of the bluegrass, on your shopping list. Keep plenty of it in your refrigerator, ready for any and every occasion. We want to remind you, too, ladies and gentlemen, we believe WKLX is the only Kentucky station at the scene of play here in Seattle, Washington. Since, to our knowledge, this is the farthest remote broadcast ever originated by a local and independent station, we want to acknowledge with special thanks our two sponsors who send you the game, Purcell's of Lexington and Dixie Ice Cream. Well, this game tonight between the Kentucky Wildcats, the Oklahoma A&M Aggies, who are known rather jointly as the Aggies, the Cowboys, and to some who are around in their home section of the state of Oklahoma, around Stillwater, as just simply the Pokes, come into this NCAA championship game tonight after their third consecutive championship. They're representing District 5 of the 8 that comprise the United States. Kentucky, of course, represents District 3 and the champion of the Eastern Division, having defeated Villanova and Illinois to win the Eastern playoffs, which were held in New York City. The officials for tonight's ball game are going to be Ab Curtis from the Southwest and Cliff Ogden from right there in the Missouri Valley Conference, the home conference for the Oklahoma Aggies. They're coached, of course, by the well-known basketball coach and ranked right at the top of the ladder, Henry Hank Iba, I-B-A, one of those names that in print looks like a misprint. Iba, Hank Iba, the orange and black of Oklahoma A&M. The Oklahoma Aggies, incidentally, represent the only school to win the NCAA championship twice. That was in 1945 and 1946, when Foothills Curlin represented the pivot post for Hank Iba, and Kentucky, the defending champions tonight, will be out to tie and equal the record set up by Oklahoma A&M. The Wildcats, of course, have something of a personal score to settle with the Aggies, since, as you may recall, it was in 1946, when most of the Wildcats of today were sophomores, that Oklahoma A&M slipped up on the Wildcats and knocked them off 37-31 in the Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans. That was in 1946. So they have something of possibly a personal score to settle with the Aggies tonight. Before we get our broadcast set and all underway, we want to say that keeping the shot chart and keeping the individual scoring honest tonight for us is Mal Stevens, the basketball coach at the College of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, which is just about 30 miles south of Seattle. The broadcast, incidentally, is going to be heard again tomorrow morning. That's going to be Sunday at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock Lexington time, since it is rather late. In spite of the fact it's only 20 minutes of 10 here in Seattle, it, of course, is 20 minutes of midnight in Lexington, and there's something for you to mark down right now for tomorrow afternoon. 1 o'clock for the complete playback of this play-by-play broadcast sent to you by Dixie Ice Cream and Purcell's of Lexington, 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Lexington time. We want to say, too, send along special thanks to those of you who, throughout central Kentucky, have sent in your donations to the Wildcat Welcome Fund to give these Wildcats a tremendous welcome home to Lexington when they return to their home base after having been on the road almost 2 weeks competing in 2 national tournaments. If you are one of the few that have not as yet sent in your contribution to that Welcome Home Fund, well, I certainly wish that you would get yours in right now. And to all of those who have contributed to the Wildcats Welcome Home Fund, we want to say thanks a million. Right now, we're getting involved in the 11th annual NCAA basketball tournament, and here's the starting lineup for the Kentucky Wildcats. Starting at guards will be Ralph Beard and Cliff Parker. Alex Groza will be at center. Jim Line and Wawa Jones will be at the forwards. Ralph Beard, the starting guard, the 21-year-old senior from Louisville, who weighs 176 pounds, stands 5 feet 10 and 1/2 inches tall. His running mate will be 28-year-old Cliff Parker, the senior from Yorktown, Indiana, who weighs 185 pounds, stands 6 feet 2 inches tall. Captain Alex Groza, the 22-year-old senior from Martins Ferry, Ohio, will be at pivot. Groza stands 6 feet 7 inches tall and weighs 220 pounds. The forwards will be Jim Line, the 22-year-old junior from Akron, Ohio, who weighs 190 pounds, stands 6 feet 2 inches tall. The other forward, 22-year-old Harlan County Hurricane senior Wallace Jones, the 205-pound, 6 foot 4 inch forward. Here's the starting lineup now for the Oklahoma A&M Aggies from Stillwater, Oklahoma, winner of the Western Division, knocking out Wyoming and Oregon State to be in the championship game tonight. The guards will be J.L. Parks and Jack Shelton. J.L. Parks, P-A-R-K-S, is a senior from Paoli, Oklahoma, who weighs 175 pounds and stands 6 feet tall. The other guard, will be Joe Bradley, who stands 6 feet 2 inches tall. He weighs 170 pounds. He's a Kelton, Oklahoma senior. And the pivot will be the much-heralded Bob Harris, who's ranked by his coach, Henry Iba, as possibly the greatest defensive center in the college basketball annals. Harris, Harris, is a senior. He hails from the South, from Linden, Tennessee. He weighs 192 pounds. Harris is exactly the same height as Alex Groza, at 6 feet 7 inches tall. The forwards will be Jack Shelton and Vernon Yates. Shelton, S-H-E-L-T-O-N, is a Stillwater, Oklahoma junior who stands 6 feet 6 inches tall, weighs 195 pounds. Vernon Yates, the other forward, is a Enid, Oklahoma senior who stands 6'4" and weighs 195 pounds. So the edge in height, very definitely, will go to the A&M Aggies. That being by virtue of Harris, 6 feet 7 inches in the pivot, by virtue of Jack Shelton, 6 feet 6 inches of height over on the forward post, as compared with Wawa Jones at 6'4", the highest member of the Wildcat squad next in position. And to offset 6'2" Jim Line, who would next be the next man in line, they have 6'4" Vernon Yates. So they're out on top of height considerably. In the guard positions, Bradley and Barker are exactly the same height. Mikhail Parks has 1.5 inches of height on rapid Ralph Beard. However, the height, of course, doesn't win all ball games, and we may see a tremendous ball game. As a matter of fact, we think you can pretty well count on it. You know, basketball fans, never before has there been such an outstanding Kentucky basketball team. And in years to come, people will still be talking about the outstanding 48-49 group of boys. We want to ask you to keep that memory even more permanent with one of the dinner dishes with a team's picture on it from Purcell's basement. It's a 10-inch plate with an ivory background, gold band, and overglazed for everlasting effect. And centered in this plate is a picture of the present University of Kentucky team, complete with the players, the coaches, and the manager, and even the names. It's suitable for hanging, for display, and this plate is found only in Purcell's basement for cost $3. Get yours next week, won't you, for your own home and for special gifts. Another Purcell exclusive, the 10-inch dinner plate featuring the present Kentucky basketball team, now found in Purcell's basement for only $3. So be sure to stop by and get your lasting memento of the immortal 48-49 Kentucky Wildcats, won't you? Stop by first thing Monday morning. We want to remind you, before the game gets underway, too, that the broadcast will be heard again tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, Central Standard Time, a complete rebroadcast of this NCAA championship game, which is emanating in Seattle, Washington, from Edmondson Pavilion on the campus of the University of Washington. Well, to give you some of the background on some of the history of the NCAA, this is the first time in the 11 years that the NCAA has been alive in the United States that it's been held outside the city of New York. And the first college to have the honor of having it on their campus as a college sport is the University of Washington. The pavilion here, known as Edmondson Pavilion, is named after Peck Edmondson, who was the basketball coach here at the University of Washington in Seattle, a town of approximately 600,000 inhabitants. The climate has been the most amazing feature of Seattle, and that is that it's so extremely moderate. And the University of Washington's beautiful campus has been rather amazing, too. As a matter of fact, all the Wildcats had the opportunity yesterday, or day before yesterday, to take a complete guided tour of the city of Seattle and see a tremendous amount of this town that seems to have a tremendous amount to offer. In other words, all the Kentuckians, 15 strong, who managed to take the tour, which represented 100% attendance, saw what they believe one of the most beautiful spots in the country. Here on the campus of the University of Washington, for instance, right now there's a $25 million building program going on. That gives you some idea of the tremendous building projects here in Seattle, as well as the buildings that are already existing on the campus of Washington. There are many historic sites throughout Seattle. We had the opportunity day before yesterday on Lake Washington, the harbor, right in the downtown part of Seattle, to see an old schooner which was brought over from England, four-mast schooner, which was brought over during the war to protect it from being bombed and has not as yet been returned. We even understand that some of the down part of it, under the waterline, is a gold. It's rather amazing to see it. Seattle, incidentally, speaking of the harbor of Lake Washington, is the only city in the world with a protected fresh and saltwater harbor. The Kentucky Wildcats have been staying at a rather unusual hotel, too. The Edmund Meany Hotel, which, as Bob Ripley says, is the only hotel in the world with all corner rooms. Every room in the 16-floor hotel is a corner room. Here you can try and put that down on paper and figure out how it can be done, because it has been done. From the corner rooms of most all the rooms that the Wildcats are staying in, you can look out of the rooms and see the snow-capped Olympic Mountain Range, which seems to be only a half a block down the street, but in the perceptive distance out here, it seems to be at least 40 miles away. There was one interesting thing that did happen in regards to taking the guided tour of Seattle, which I imagine most of you around Kentucky would get a kick out of. The tour was something like $2.30, and after about 2 hours and a half of riding a bus and having the boys say what all they thought about Seattle, which was pretty much about 2-to-1 the job of the Chamber of Commerce could have done for the city, the bus driver pulled up in front of the Edmund Meany Hotel and said, well, this is it. We come to the rough part where we charge each one of you $2.50. Well, it seems that Coach Rupp had already planned on paying for the entire trip, but Groza, the minute the bus stopped, jumped off and headed into the hotel. Coach Rupp saw a good place for a joke, so he told the bus driver that if he didn't get Groza pretty soon, well, he probably would never collect from him. So the bus driver opened the door and whipped out after Groza, he being about a 5-foot 10-inch man, and caught up with 6-foot 7-inch Groza. Well, that was the end of the story, but nonetheless, it was funny to watch the man chase Groza through the lobby trying to collect his $2.30. He got all his money, of course. Well, the teams are still taking the warm-up shots from Edmondson Pavilion, still waiting to get the game underway, which will be the championship game of the NCAA to rank the teams 1 and 2 in the nation. Illinois has already won the distinction tonight of being the number 3 team in the nation by defeating the Oregon State Beavers by a score of 57-53. You know, before we get into the game, we want to remind you about the Dixie Ice Cream Flavor of the Month, Coconut Fruit. It has shredded coconut and fruits blended with the cream of the bluegrass to make a delicious ice cream. It's available in both the bulk and the carry-home pint packages, available at your neighborhood Dixie dealer. So be sure to keep Dixie Ice Cream on hand at home at all times. Dixie is delicious for afternoon sundaes and par a la mode. Dixie's healthful as well as refreshing. To repeat the officials for tonight's game again, both of them Western officials, Ab Curtis from the Southwest and Cliff Ogden from the Missouri Valley. The benches for the respective schools here in Edmondson Pavilion will be across the way. Right now, it's Harry Lancaster, Coach Adolph Rupp, Hamza Yessen, and Bud Berger already mounted on the Kentucky bench, with the WKLX broadcast facilities being right here on the midcourt stripe in the pavilion, and the Kentucky bench looking across the way is to our left, with the cowpokes sitting off to our right. The pavilion seats almost 13,000. There are non-existent seats here, although there are spectators here. The people of Seattle and the Pacific Northwest out here have taken a tremendous amount of pride in having the finals of the NCAA out here. They've shown it very explicitly. They've treated everyone wonderfully and completely giving out everything they had in the way of hospitality and warmth to everyone on the Kentucky Wildcat traveling squad. It's been that way almost the entire 3 or 4 days that we've been in town. The people have been doing a tremendous amount for everyone to make them happy and completely at home out in the Pacific Northwest, which for most people is quite a distance from home. The NCAA furnished a chartered plane for the Wildcats to make their trip out, the plane which we came out on, and also harbored the University of Kentucky, Illinois team. It was a chartered United Airlines DC-6, the mainliner 300. Both the basketball teams from the East were on it, Kentucky and Illinois, and some NCAA officials. Tug Wilson, the commissioner for the Big Ten and secretary-treasurer of the NCAA, along with Ned Irish from Madison Square Garden, and many of the other officials were on the DC-6 coming into Seattle. Of course, the flight out was not as picturesque as might have been the train, but nonetheless, it was still quite a sight to see Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier, which seemingly was so far, far away from central Kentucky. The plane made only 2 stops, Chicago, Illinois, and in Boise, Idaho. And for all of those who may be wanting to meet the Kentucky Wildcats when they return tomorrow night, Coach Adolph Rupp is taking the 4 seniors, Alex Groza, Wawa Jones, Ralph Beard, and Cliff Parker, straight through to New York City tomorrow, where they'll hold their first workout Monday morning at 9 o'clock for the East-West All-Star Game. However, the remaining portion of the squad, that being after that, Jim Line, Walt Hurst, Dale Barnstable, Roger Day, Johnny Strow, Al Bruno, the four members of the staff, Humsey Essen, Bud Berger, Adolph Rupp, and Harry Lancaster, will all be heading back to Lexington. And yours truly will be aboard the plane, too. We should be in Lexington, scheduled at 7:15 tomorrow night. The Wildcats are slowly getting warmed up tonight. The heat in the pavilion is not quite what it has been throughout the season in the other pavilions, gardens, and arenas that Kentucky has played in. Beard is the first with Wawa Jones to peel off the top jacket. Both boys still have on the warm-up pants, which is rather unusual for the Wildcats, who seemingly are easily heated, and they have the jackets off pretty fast. Right now, Purcell's pays tribute to Mr. W.C. Heacock and Mrs. Jessie Bailey, the two capable people in charge of Purcell's credit office. Mr. Heacock, the credit manager, has held this position at Purcell's for over 10 years. And Mrs. Bailey, the assistant credit manager, has been employed at Purcell's for 31 years. Constant and tireless efforts on the parts of both of these Purcellites make shopping at Purcell's, whether by charge or by cash, such a pleasure. Purcell's honors Mr. Heacock and Mrs. Jessie Bailey. Also, Mr. Grogan at Purcell's fired a wire along to us to ask us to be sure to remind all the listeners that the Junior Chamber of Commerce testimonial dinner for the Wildcats will be at the Lafayette Hotel this year. It'll be on Monday, April the 11th at 6:30. And tickets are on sale at Purcell's service desk that cost $5 each. Remember, the Junior Chamber of Commerce testimonial dinner at the Lafayette Hotel at 6:30, Monday, April the 11th. Into the NCAA championship game with the starting five for the Wildcats in the dressing room with Coach Adolph Rupp receiving their last-minute instructions before getting into the game. The West has definitely been the major factor in the NCAA. The East, in spite of the fact they've won it for the past 2 years, with Holy Cross winning it in 1947 and Kentucky winning it last year, West still holds the edge over the East by a 6-4 margin. That in spite of the fact the tournament has been played in the East for the first 10 years of its 11-year history. The West has won 6 games, while the East have won only 4. The East, of course, has won it for the past 2 years. The Kentucky Wildcats, if they come out victorious tonight in the game, will be the second team to have won the NCAA championship for the nation twice. The Oklahoma Aggies are the only other team to have won the NCAA championship more than one time. That being in 45 and 46, when big 7-foot Bob Curlin was the pivot man for the Oklahoma A&M Aggies. And it was in 1946 also that the Wildcats lost to the Oklahoma A&M Cowpokes in the Sugar Bowl by the 37-31 score. The only time in the recent history that the two schools have met. So that may account for some of the grudge that the Wildcats may want to be out to avenge tonight, to get back at the A&M Aggies and to get their national title restored. The NCAA champions of 1948. Of course, it was Kentucky who won the NCAA last year, went on to the Olympic trials to win the college bracket, and lose out in the finals to the Phillips Oilers by a 4-point score, 53-49. Of course, there's been a lot of talk as to who is the real champion of the nation, whether it's the NCAA winner or the NIT winner. Kentucky attempted to win both this year and ran into a disastrous Monday afternoon 1 week ago when Loyola upended them by an 11-point margin. It's been 3 times in previous history that the NCAA champion has met the NIT champ for the mythical national championship, and all 3 times the NCAA champion has won out. The first one happened back in 1943 when Wyoming, who won the NCAA, defeated St. John's, who won the NIT. The next year, in 1944, Utah, the winner of the NCAA, defeated St. John's in Madison Square Garden for the mythical championship with the 2 champs of the NCAA and the NIT meeting. And in 1945, the last time that the 2 winners were brought together, Oklahoma A&M defeated DePaul 52-44 to make it 3 consecutive years in a row. And that's the last time that the NIT champ has met the NCAA champ for the mythical title of national champions. The starting 5 for the Kentucky Wildcats: Ralph Beard, Clip Barker, Alex Croza, Jim Line, and Wawa Jones, are already on the floor now, still in those warm-up jackets, though, with Washington Pavilion having little or no heat available, and it's an extremely large place. The boys are still staying pretty well wrapped up and not feeling down to the exact playing uniform so far. The Oklahoma A&M Aggies are back on the floor now with the first five out taking their warm-up shots. Off to our right and off to our left, the offensive court for the Kentucky Wildcats, with the starting five taking their final warm-up shots before the game gets underway. We've already met one Lexington person since we've been in Seattle. Of course, the alumni around Seattle, people from around central Kentucky, who in the past years have moved into this Pacific Northwest region, have made themselves known in a rather scattered sort of way. But the only one person whom we've met from central Kentucky so far, and seems to represent the rooting section for the Wildcats, is Mr. Bob Honecker and his mother, who are here in Seattle tonight. Of course, it was quite a different story in New York City, which is much more accessible to Lexington, Kentucky, and central Kentucky. The Wildcats were pretty well represented for the fans. Tonight, it's the other way around. The Kentucky Wildcats take off the warm-up uniforms and are just about ready to go now, wearing the road uniforms of all blue, trimmed in white, with the large white numerals in Kentucky across the front. Oklahoma wearing their white uniforms trimmed in black and gold. They move off to the side. The Wildcats move off on their side, waiting just a moment for the national anthem. Well, right now, the public address system, the announcer is going to introduce individually the member, the NCAA defending champions. Johnny Stow is the first of the Wildcats to be introduced. Roger Day steps out next. Al Bruno, the next member of the Wildcat squad, to take his line. Dale Barnstable introduced. And Walter Hirsch, still waiting on the bench, receives his introduction and marches out. And now the introduction for the starting five. The introduction for the old lefty of the squad, Jim Lloyd. Ralph Beard's introduction, and he gets a nice hand. The old ball hawk and magician, Cliff Barker, out along the foul line in Kentucky offensive court. There's a hand for Captain Alex Crosa. There's the first five members of the Kentucky Wildcats. The public address announcer has told the 13,000 people here in Edmonton Pavilion in Seattle, Washington, that Ralph Beard, Cliff Barker, Alex Crosa, and Wawa Jones were members of the Olympic team. Coach Adolph Rupp receives a tremendous hand here in Seattle as he takes his place alongside the Kentucky Wildcats. And now the spotlight switches off to our left for the introduction to the Cowpokes from Stillwater, Oklahoma, representing the Western Division of the NCAA by virtue of their wins over Wyoming and Oregon State. In the first game here tonight, Illinois of the East won the third place over Oregon State. The final score was Illinois 57, Oregon State 53. A close, hard-fought game with Illinois cinching the game in the final 17 seconds of play. The reserve strength for the Aggies, too stronger than the Wildcats. Here's the starting lineup. Joe Bradley, the 6'2" senior from Cowden, Oklahoma, takes his position with J.O. Parks for the Aggies, the starting guard. Jack Shelton, a 6'6" junior from Stillwater, introduced as a starting forward. And Vernon Yates takes his place for the Aggies. Waiting now. Bob Harris, the captain of the squad, lines up, and he gets a nice hand. Hank Iba. Hank Iba takes his place along his reserves. And the partisan fans for the Aggies are lined up and ready to go. Here's the introduction to the officials. Ab Curtis introduced. Cliff Ogden of the Missouri Valley Conference is introduced. Both of them Western officials. There's the warning horn from across the way now. As the spotlight centers in the opening part of the floor, the house lights come on, and we're waiting to get the game underway. Immediately across the floor and in front of our WKLX broadcast booth, the Kentucky starting five getting their final instructions from Coach Adolph Rupp before we get underway. Just a reminder, the broadcast is coming to you directly from Edmondson Pavilion, Seattle, Washington, to the facilities of WKLX, Lexington, Kentucky. The Aggies are still in their huddle with Hank Ibar, the old hold-the-ball strategist of basketball. They come out and break huddle now. We're just about ready to go as Captain Alex Rhodes and Captain Bob Harris for Oklahoma A&M line up in the fifth position with the University of Washington Husky Band playing to our left. And we're opening the championship game. The toss, the tip over to Barker of Kentucky interfered, who moves into the Kentucky offensive court. That's up now, fakes one, and gives it into Jones, who moves out along the head of the circle over to Barker, who cuts to his right over and then jumps short of the mark. No good. Rebounded by Harris for the Oklahoma A&M Aggies. The Aggies are on the move now over to J.L. Parks from the front part of the court to Bradley. Sets her up over to Shelton. And on the corner to Harris. He's out of position. Over to Shelton. Back out on the front lines to J.L. Parks. He holds the ball. Holds it in on the side of Shelton. Back out in the front lines to J.L. Parks. The high in the pivot, batted down by Parker. But Harris comes in, scoops it up, breaks under the basket. Jones goes with him. A jump shot rolls over and in. A jump shot by Jack Shelton is good. And the Aggies lead 2-0. Jim Line takes the pass, gives it into Gross in the pivot for the Kentucky Wildcats. Gross the pivot, shoots up, and just short of the mark. No good. Trying to come in from under the boards. It's rebounded by Joe Bradley, and he's fouled by Jim Line from the rear. Joe Bradley taking the balls off the Kentucky board was fouled by Jim Line of Kentucky, who committed the first foul in the championship game. One charged against 6'2" Jim Line of Kentucky. 6'2" Joe Bradley on the free throw lane for the Cowboys. Lining up at the double safety, one behind the other. J.L. Parks lining up with Yates. The free throw is up and in. Drops through for Joe Bradley. The Aggies lead Kentucky 3-0. Barker over to Jones in the front part of the court, who blasts down, shoots one. No good as he blasts in under the basket. Taken right on the end line by Jack Shelton. He feeds her over to Joe Bradley. He moves back in the Aggies front court. Flips it over again on the side to Shelton. Back to Yates. The front line, she goes to Parks. In the corner to Bradley, on the basket to Harris. He spins, hooks. It's up and rolls out of there. No good. Dozier goes for the rebound. Picked up by Beard off the floor. The fast break over to Barker, who breaks in, takes it a long bounce pass over to Jim Line. He spins a jump shot. Good. Jim Line, a spinning left-handed jump shot is good. 3-2 the scores. Kentucky moves within 1 point of the Aggies. Back in the move now for Oklahoma A&M as J.L. Parks crosses the 10-second line. Parker slaps that ball. It bounces high in the air, but he recovers. Passes it on the side to Shelton. Back out to Harris, who moves off the pivot, breaks in a one-hander. Is good. He breaks around, goes in to lay it in. The Aggies lead 5-2. Beard past the 10-second line for Kentucky. Sets it up over to Barker now, deep in the front line. Kentucky front court. In on the left, he goes to Jim Line. Back over to Beard, who set, shoots high, hits the rim, bounds off to the right. Grows the rebounds to Kentucky. Cornered along the end line. He moves out. The ball batted out of his hands by Harris and picked up easily in the front court by J.L. Parks. Back over to Bradley. To Parks in the front part of the court. He comes to Harris. And on the pivot it goes. Yates, a spin shot, no good. Jim Line goes for the rebound. A whistle and a foul called into the basket on Jack Shelton of the Aggies. That's the first one called against the Aggies. Being charged for 6'6" Jack Shelton, S-H-E-L-T-O-N. It's Wawa Jones on the free throw lane for Kentucky. J.L. Parks moves back behind the head of the circle for Oklahoma A&M. Beard and Barker move back into the safety for Kentucky. Jones on the free throw lane. Kentucky trailing 2-5. One of them coming to Wawa. He steps, shoots, short, hits the rim, comes out there. Jim Line goes for it, but he can't get it as Jack Shelton takes it off for the Cowpokes. In the front part of the court, it comes off on the far side of Joe Bradley. Back over to Yates. Out in the front lines, it goes to Harris now, who's playing out deep. And on the side to Parks. Back to Bradley. Back to Parks. Still out in the front line, dribbling around. Barker stays right with him. Over to Yates, the high in the pivot now. Goes off on the side to Jack Shelton. Back over to Parks. Back on the front line to Yates, still working the ball. Back and forth out in the front lines. Over to Bradley on the side to Shelton. Back out to J.L. Parks in the corner to Bradley, off to the right. Beard tightens up defensively. Comes out to Harris off the head of the circle. Out deep in the front lines now to Vernon Yates. Weeze moves around. Fakes for the break. Still no goal. The ball comes back to Bradley. In the pivot it goes to Shelton. He pivots, moves around, hands off to Bradley. Beard cuts him off from going into the basket. Over to Harris, to Parks. On the far side to Harris. The fans begin to show signs of wrestling, and it's still back and forth. Bradley makes a break to the basket, jump, shoots. Jones bats it down and picks it up for the Kentucky Wildcats. Scratches fast, break up the court now, past the 10-second line. Weaves over to his left. Pulls her up right there. Flips one out deep in the front lines to Cliff Barker, who moves out along the post now and sets her up. On the side it goes to Jones. He moves off the head of the circle, fakes a flip over to Beard, then sets shoot. Hits the rim, goes under the basket. Jones tries to get it, but he can't get it. It goes almost out of bounds, and it's flipped in by Groza, but picked up off on the side by J.L. Parks. In the front part of the court to Harris, he breaks for the basket. Groza breaks in front of him and cuts him off. Out it comes from the front lines to Yates. Over to Bradley. Still out deep in the front lines, near the midcourt stripe. Someone from across the way yells freezes. As he goes out to Bob Harris, who's out deep in the front part of the court. Over on the far side to Shelton. Back up to Harris, a one-hander rolls over and around the rim as Groza rebounds for Kentucky. No good. The Aggies still playing the old hold the ball. Beard to Jones in the front part of the Kentucky court now. The Aggies leading 5-2. Beard moves out in the front. Over to Barker. In on the near side of the line. Takes the cock that left arm, then moves out. Hands off to Jones. A high from the pivot to Groza. He jumps, shoots over the head of Harris. And they call, let's see, a whistle under the basket. Groza was fouled, and the basket will count. 5-4 the score. And they're charging the foul on the pivot man. 6'7" Bob Harris. Alex Groza on the line has one shot coming, a chance to tie the game up at 5-5. Beard and Barker back in the safety with Parks. The free throw by Groza is good, and the game is tied at 5-5. 16 minutes remain to play in the first half. Joe Bradley in the front part of the court. Over to Harris, who's out deep in the front lines. Harris moves in on a two-bounce dribble. Gives her in on the side of Jack Yates and moves out along the foul line. Barker moves in from the front, steals the ball. It rolls out of bounds. Jones picks her up just before it goes out. Slips and falls. There's a whistle. Jumping right on top of him is Vernon Yates of the Cowpokes, and there'll be a jump in the Oklahoma A&M offensive court. With the ball, Hawk Parks slapping it out of bounds 3 times in the Aggies front court now. He's tossing the tip over to Groza. He slaps it over to Beard, who can't get it. It goes out to the white team, the Aggies, on the near side of the court. J.L. Parks out to put the ball in play. Beard watches him as he throws it into Joe Bradley. Out deep to the head of the circle. He cuts up to his right. Barker moves in and hawks in as the pass goes off to Shelton. Back out to Harris, who's deep out on the front line. Over on the post it goes. Harris moves in, gets it at the head of the circle. Back out deep in the front lines to Joe Bradley. Still looking for that certain shot. Bradley moves into his right. Gets the screen. Doesn't shoot. Back out to Harris. Over to Bradley. Still off to the right-hand corner. He moves out in the front lines. Over on the side of Vernon Yates now. Groza cuts it off as he goes into Harris. Moves into the Kentucky front court. Jumps and shoots. It's good. Big Al Groza knocked 2 photographers off their feet. Completely back over. They're all lined up in the basket in a very awkward position. And Groza clipped them. 7-5 Kentucky now as the Wildcats get the lead for the first time in the ballgame. Joe Bradley over to Bob Harris. Then on the pivot it goes. The Parks, he breaks by. Beard bats the ball out of his hands. Barker goes on the floor with him, and Harris comes in there. There's a whistle. And they move out into the jump circle for the jump. Wawa Jones moving out to jump with Joe Bradley moves out. There's a timeout call for Oklahoma A&M. Jones leads the Wildcats over to the Kentucky bench, cheering them on and letting them go. Kentucky leading Oklahoma A&M by a 7-5 score. You know, basketball fans, when children are restless, hard to please, give them a nutritious dish of Dixie ice cream to enjoy. Watch their faces light up, the tiredness disappear. Combine pleasure and health by serving Dixie ice cream often. Delicious, full-flavored, refreshing. You can't get a better, more healthful food for your money. Enjoy Dixie, the cream of the bluegrass. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that WKLX is the only Kentucky station at the scene of play in Seattle. And since to our knowledge, this is the farthest remote broadcast ever originated by a local and independent station, we want to acknowledge with special thanks our 2 sponsors who send you the game for Sells and Dixie Ice Cream, the drop in the Aggies offensive court. While Jones jumping with 6-foot J.O. Parks. Curtis out for the toss. The boys line up along the line, jockeying for positions. 14.5 minutes to play. Kentucky on top by 2 points at a 7-5 score. There's the toss and skip. Harris taps her out. Jones goes for it. Groza takes it in under the Aggies basket for the Wildcats. Flips her up to Barker near the midcourt stripe. He crosses the 10-second line with it. Moves into the guard post. This Kentucky sets it up. In on the side, he goes to Jim Line. He moves out, hands off to Beard at the head of the circle. Beard sets, shoots high, hits the rim, comes out of there. Beard races into the corner with Jones to get it. Groza goes on the floor after it, and he goes out of bounds. Bradley out to put it in play for the Aggies, but it goes out to Kentucky off the side of the court. Handed in by Cliff Ogden to Beard. The pass comes in court to Jones, who moves off in the corner, breaks for the basket. Yates goes with him. Jones covers, turns back out away from the end line, flips over to Jim Line along the foul line. Line jump shoots with that left hand in front of the basket, though, and goes out of bounds off the hands of Groza, trying to save it. It's out to the Aggies. The pass comes in on the side of Yates. Up near the midcourt stripe, Parks brings it in the front lines over to Harris. He breaks for the basket. Groza stands right there with him. The pass goes up on the side. The Yates back. Over it goes to Shelton. Over in the corner again to Yates. A one-hander is no good. Groza goes up. Jones gets it off for Kentucky. As he tries to flip it out, it's batted down by Yates. Fed over again on the side. No good. And he shoots. It's no good by Harris. Groza rebounds to Kentucky. Over to Barker. Kentucky leading. Oklahoma A&M 7-5. In the corner to Jones. He sets, shoots high. Hits the rim. Bounds high in the air. No good. Jim Line goes for it. And Harris is right there with him to take it too. Both boys come off the boards with it simultaneously. A jump in the Wildcats' offensive court. Ab Curtis out for the toss. Line goes up with it. Harris goes up with it. Batted high in the air. Once, twice goes on the floor. Yates picks it up for the Aggies. And Oklahoma A&M's back on the move now. Back on the near side of the court to J.L. Parks, who moves it over on the front line. Fakes it to his right. Gives her over to Harris. Harris still out deep in the front line. Again to Bradley, who cuts to his left. Barker tightening up on the defense, and it goes to pivot to Harris, who moves out along the foul line. Hands off to Parks, he goes in. Groza moves with him. There's a whistle as he shoots. Foul on the basket as Groza moves in, and they call Groza for pushing. They call Groza for pushing. That's the first one on Alex Groza of Kentucky. Number 44, J.L. Parks on the free throw lane. Moving back into the safety. 6'4" Vernon Yates. Joe Bradley playing just off the head of the circle, right in back of shooting mate J.L. Parks. Parks eyes the mark. Slips her up 15. 7-6 the score. The Aggies within 1 point of Kentucky now. Barker in the front part of the court sets her up. As Jones takes his pivot post over to Beard the line. Line moves out, flips her out to Barker in the front lines, who slows her down, starts his play again. Back in the line, who cocks that left arm on the side, shoots, hits the rim, bounds high in the air, no good. Jones taps it up once, twice, no good. Yates comes off with it, tries to swing it clear under the basket, and it gets out of his hands and out of bounds. Goes out to Kentucky. Jones out to put the ball in play. Barker moves in, calls his play, bounds the ball out on the floor. Flips one, out off on the side to Beard, back to Groza. In the pivot to Jim Line, he moves around, jumps to that left-hander, hits the rim, spins in and out, though, and rebounded off on the side by Yates. Over to Bob Harris. 7-6, Kentucky leading. 12 minutes and 15 seconds in the first half. On the near side of the court, the Vernon Yates. He's cut off by Line. Over to Shelton, to Bob Harris, who cuts off to his left with Groza hawking him. The ball comes out in the front part of the court to Bradley. Back in the pivot to Harris. Throws the ball right to the head of the circle, hands on the side. Takes it by Parks. The one-hander rolls in and out. No good, and Groza takes it off for Kentucky. Groza rebounds for the Wildcats under the Aggies basket as the shot by Parks is no good, driving under. Kentucky still on top at 7-6. Barker in the front part of the court, flips over to Beard, who cuts to his left, and a one-hander hits in there. Good, a beauty one-hander by Beard. Sends Kentucky ahead. 9-6 is a whistle and a foul called on the play. Going to be one shot coming to Beard, and they call the foul on J.L. Parks, the 6-foot senior from Paoli, Oklahoma, who tried to break in with Beard as he made his fast stab at the basket. Beard has one free throw coming. The eye shoots good. Kentucky 10, Oklahoma A&M 6 for the longest lead of the game for either team. 11 minutes and 45 seconds to play. In the front part of the court, it comes off on the side of Yates. He pivots around. Shelton takes the pass. Back out on the front lines to Vernon Yates. He moves over to his left now. Swings around with Jim Line chasing, and he gives it over to Parks. Parks out along the head of the circle. Yates breaks for the basket. One-handed by Parks is good. A beauty. A beautiful executed play between Shelton and Parks. Kentucky back in the move now. Line in the front part of the court. Takes it from Beard. Fakes one of the pivot. Flips her in there to Groza, who hooks up and comes out of there. No good, and rebounded by Harris. Kentucky leading 10-8. 11 minutes and 15 seconds remain in the first half. The Aggies back on the attack now and still playing the slow, deliberate possession ball. And on the side of the Jack Sullivan, he moves over. Wallace Jones covers up. Beard tries to cut it off the Parks in the front part of the court. He moves over to his right. The screen goes up to Shelton. He doesn't shoot. Over to Harris. He moves around on the screen. Fakes the jump shot. Then flips it out in the front part of the court to Bradley. Holds the ball off in his hip and slows the play down just a bit. Moves out to Parks. In on the pivot he goes. Still way off the post to Harris. He gives it to Shelton. Screen point. Shelton breaks in. Goes back to the ball on the floor. Picked up by Parks. Parks got off the head of the circle. Dribbles over to his right. Slowly holding the ball. Faking the pass out in the front line. Beard stabs at it, connects with it, but doesn't knock it to the floor. Taken by Harris. He flips her out near the mid-court stripe on the side of Joe Bradley. He moves over to his right to Shelton. Back over to Yates. Still out deep in the front lines as Shelton breaks for the basket. The ball goes in on the pivot right on the line to Harris. Back over to Parks. He's still off the head of the circle, holding the ball. Ball on the side, it goes to Bradley now. In there, Jim Line cuts it off as he goes into the pivot and turns it for Harris. He moves right in front with Groza from the rear and took it away from him. Over to Barker to Beard in the front part of the Kentucky court. Kentucky in possession now with 10 minutes and 15 seconds and a half. Over to Barker to the right. To Jones, who moves out along the head of the circle. Breaks in the ball, batted out. His hands rolls on the floor. Jim Line, Beard both will go for it. Picked up by Parks. Over to Bradley. He's open. Barker races. Bats the ball out of his hands on a beautiful block. They're going to call Barker for fouling, though. He slapped the ball into his stomach. That's the person called against Cliff Barker on the free throw lane. It's Joe Bradley for the Aggies. Out of the ball game is Vernon Yates. Been replaced by Tom Jackwitz. J-A-Q-U-E-T, 6'4" senior from St. Joseph, Missouri. The first one by Bradley is good. Kentucky's lead whittled to 1 point at 10-9. Another shot coming to Bradley with a chance to tie the ball game up. He eyes shoots, hits the back of the rim, comes out, throws it, tips her over to Barker, who starts a fast break. Over to Jim Line, he moves off the head of the circle, whips over to Beard, and it goes out of bounds, out of the side. His arm is tracked across the wrist by Harris. Pass comes in the front part of the court from Jarquet to Harris. He's off to the right. Kentucky leading 10-9. Out deep in the front lines, it comes to Joe Bradley. Over the side to Jarquet, who moves out. A blonde-headed boy, standing 6'4". Still out deep in the front lines, he goes to Harris. He moves into the head of the circle. No shot. The pass over the side to Jack Shelton. He can't get over there. Over to Bradley. In the corner he goes to Jarquet. He moves out. Line moves with him. He spins. Hooks comes out there. No good. Throws the rebounds away from Harris. Under the basket. Rosa still sweeping the defensive boards. Beard in the front part of the court. Sets her up for Kentucky with the Wildcats leading 10-9. 9.5 minutes remain in the game. In the first half of the game, Beard sets in the front line. Shoots, hits the rim. Rolls up. No good. Rosa Jones batted up once twice. Beard takes the rebound. Out along the foul line. Over to Barker to Jones, who holds the ball extended above his head, then fakes into the corner. Doesn't go all the way. Flips her out to Barker again. Back over to Jones, who cuts through along the foul line. Goes under. Hooks her up and in. A beauty by Wawan. Again into the photographers. Seemingly they would move the photographers, but so far not yet. 12-9 Kentucky. Playing in the front part of the court is Tom Jarquet. Goes into the right corner. Jim Line pulls him up out to Harris. Back over to Jarquet, who takes the one-hander. Takes towards the end line. I got to Bradley. Over to Harris on the line. Breaking by. Barker bats the ball out of his hands and is picked up by Groza. Cliff Barker, a beautiful defensive game. 4 times he's knocked the ball out of the Aggies' hold-it style. This time away from Cliff. Harris. Barker takes the pass from Groza, who's back in the Kentucky front court. Over to Jim Line. Back to Barker. He's off on the side. Steps and fires her in the pivot to Groza, who moves around. Harris goes with him and traps him under the board. Coming up on the inside is Gates. Can't get away from Groza. He pivots, walks around, and they call Groza, and Harris didn't even have a hand on it. Groza complains, but there's no use. Officiating is officiating. We're out ready to jump now. Groza was unable to pass over there, but he was still maintaining possession of the ball. Barker takes the tip deep in the backcourt. Flips her over to Beard. In the pivot it goes to Groza. He moves around. Hooks. Good by Groza. A beautiful right-handed hook shot by Al Groza. And Kentucky leads with 8 minutes to play. 14-9. In the pivot it goes to Yates. He spins, hooks her up, rims out of there, and Jim Line rebounds to Kentucky over to Walla Jones. Jones blasts up past the 10-second line. Moves away from Jarquet, moves in, flips behind his back, but it's cut down from going into Groza on the side by J.L. Parks, who moves in the front part of the court, hits the ball with his foot, and it goes out of bounds. It'll go out to Kentucky over the end line. The bounce pass comes in from Beard to Barker. There's a whistle, and a foul is called by the Oklahoma A&M Aggies, who've fallen off the pace now at 14-9 behind the Kentucky Wildcats. Brazil pays tribute to Mr. J. Porter Evans and Mrs. Gussie Jones. Mr. Evans is the controller at Brazil's and has held this position for 2 years. Previous to this, he was employed by another Lexington firm. Mrs. Jones is the head bookkeeper of Brazil's auditing department and has worked there for 15 years. Brazil's honors Mr. Evans and Miss Jones. We want to remind you, too, about the exclusive in Brazil's basement, and that's the 10-inch dinner plate with the ivory background and the gold band and a picture of the Kentucky Wildcats 48-49 basketball team overglazed for permanency. Sold exclusively in Lexington at Brazil's for only $3. So be sure to stop by to get your lasting memento of the Kentucky Wildcats. First playing Monday morning. Jim Line comes out of the Kentucky lineup. He's replaced by 6'3" Dale Barnstable at forward, the Antioch, Illinois junior. Barnstable running at forwards with Jones, Groza at pivot, Cliff Barker, Ralph Beard are at the guards. Let it go now as Barker moves into the front court. Gets over to his right to Wawa Jones, who moves out along the head of the circle, flips it back over to Barker. A hook shot hits the rim, bounds high in the air, rebounded by Barnstable. He goes on the floor with the ball, and it's batted out and away from him by Bradley. The ball goes out of bounds. They call a foul against Kentucky. We believe against Barker. Hits against Barker, who commits his second personal foul of the game. Joe Bradley up to the free throw lane now. He has one shot coming. Kentucky 14, the Aggies 9. 7 minutes, 40 seconds to play. Bradley on the line, eyes the mark, shoots between the knees, up and in. 14-10 the score. Kentucky leading by 4 points as Barker comes in the front part of the court, cuts over to the head of the circle, lifts her out to Beard along the front line. The bounce pass in on the side of Groza. A hook shot is in and out as it dribbles off on the front lines, rebounded by Yates for the Aggies. Bounces on the near side over to Parks. Tom Jarquet, who moves past the 10-second line, cuts over to his right now in the front court. Barnstable tightens up on Jarquet as the pass goes in on the side of Sheldon. High one Harris off the pivot, foul line deep though. Holds the ball, holds it over on the side of Bradley now, moves out deep in the front line. Over to Jarquet, cutting to his left, then to Harris. Off the head of the circle. He moves into the head of the circle, gives it to Park. He cuts to his left. Over to Jackwood again. He cuts to his left. Jumps shoots a one-hander that hits the rim. Comes out and Groza makes a beautiful rebound. But he's hit from the front and drops the ball. Picked up on the side by Parks out to Bradley in the front lines. Into Harris. And they call Groza from the rear. They call Groza from the rear. That's two of them called on Alex Groza of Kentucky. The Wildcats leading 14-10. 6 minutes, 55 seconds to play. 6'7" Bob Harris on the line for the Aggies. One shot coming. Bounds the ball, one size the mark, shoots between the knees, it's in. 14-11 the score. The Aggies have hit 5 for 5 at the free throw lane, staying in the ball, game on free throws. Beard moves in the attack court now, cuts over to his right, gives it to Jones, screens for him. Jones cuts to his right, though, doesn't take the screen, moves in, fires back to Beard, moves back out on the front lines over to Barker on the near side of Barnstable. Moves out along the head of the circle, flips to the Beard to Jones at the head of the circle. Jones turns around, sets, Yates covers up on him as the pass comes back out to Barker, moves over to his right to Beard. Beard takes one into Jones and gives it over to Barker, who's left to Barnstable. Barnstable moves out along the head of the circle, then goes all the way, pulls up, gives her out again to Barker. Barker weaves back and forth, holds the ball, and he goes to Jones, who cuts to his right, breaks in there, flips her back out to Barker as he's covered from the front to the rear. One-hander by Barker's good. A beauty by Cliff Barker. He hit it off on the side, and there's a foul being called against the Aggies. They call a foul on the Aggies, and the goal will count 16-11. A beautiful one-hand shot off about 8 feet to the right. They're going to charge the foul on 6'6" Jack Sheldon, who tried to cover up on Barker and commits his second foul. Barker shoots good. 17-11 Kentucky. As Barker adds 3 points to the total to give the Wildcats a 6-point lead. In the front part of the court, Joe Bradley cuts over to his left along the head of the jump circle. Lifts her over to Yates, off on the side of Bob Harris. He cuts to his right, goes in, Groza drives him under the basket, and he's trapped him there by Jones. Over to Yates. The one-hander is good. A beautiful one-hander off on the far side of the board. Barnstable takes the ball in the front part of the Kentucky court with the Wildcats leading 17-13. Over to Barker on the side of Jones. He holds the ball over Beard's head and cuts to his right. Fakes her over to Barnstable at the head of the circle. Feeds it into Groza. Batted out of his hands. Al moves over, covers up, takes the ball, though, for the Wildcats. Holds it in the corner. Still looking for Jones over the pivot. Back out to Beard. Beard holds the ball over to Barker. Barker cuts to his left now. Out on the front line, still just off the head of the circle. Over to Barnstable. Cuts over to his left. Over to Beard. Beard out on the front line. Set, shoots. Good. Hits the back of the rim. Bounds up. And rebounded off on the side by J.O. Parks. In the front part of the court, to Shelton, over the right to Bradley, who cuts into his right with Barker cornering him. Out he comes on the side of Jack Shelton. Over to Harris. A one-hander by Harris is good. Bob Harris, a one-hander, back behind the head of the circle, cuts the Kentucky lead at 17-15. 5 minutes and 10 seconds to play in the first half. Barker at the head of the circle, hooks one in the pivot, cut down, though, by Bob Harris. On a beauty for the Aggies. They've been behind 6 points, and they've come back to within 2 of Kentucky now at 17-15. 5 minutes to play. Bradley fires one to pivot right on the foul line. Harris, the handoff up the side to Jackwood. Barnstable moves in, and they call Jackwood for walking with the ball. Side court to Kentucky. Beard flips her into Barker. Moves slowly up the backcourt now. Barnstable and Groza off in the wing. Goes in the pivot. Harris playing in front of him over to Barker. To Barnstable in the front part of the court. Out to Jones at the head of the circle, who's playing a tremendous workhorse game. He goes blasting down the alley. Head over the side of Groza, who lays it in. Jones playing a tremendous game. Pivots and moves down the alley, flips over on the side of Groza, who lays it in to give a Kentucky a 19-15 lead. 4 minutes, 20 seconds to play in the first half. Harris in the pivot, flips her back out on the front lines to Bradley, cuts over to his left. Bradley over to Jackwood, back to Harris, who moves out along the head of the circle. Groza playing him just slightly loose. Over to Parks, to Jackwood, who cuts to his right. Barnstable goes with him and cuts him off. Back out to Harris at the head of the circle, over to Bradley, who moves out in the front lines now. Sets it up for the Oklahoma A&M Aggies. The pass comes in on the side of Jackwood, who breaks into his right, flips you over to Harris. The one-hand jump shot is short of the rim. No good. Batted out to Beard. Beard starts up, pulls up just short of the 10-second line. Flips it on a long pass from the front part of the court to Barker. The Wildcats back in possession now, leading 19-15. 3 minutes, 45 seconds remaining in the half. Jones holds the ball off on the side, over to Beard. Bounce pass back over to Barker out in the front lines. He swings over, gives it to Jones. Jones breaks in, goes under, a one-hander is. Ooh, it rolls off on the front lip of the rim. Comes out no good with Wawa Jones blasting down the alley. Just missing, rebounded off on the side. By Tom Jackwood, brings in the front part of the court, the pass on the side. Barker covers up. As the pass goes to Joe Bradley. A foul is called on Cliff Barker, and they call him for blocking out on Bradley. And that is 3 of them on Cliff Barker. And Bradley on the line. He has 3 for 3. This is his 4th attempt, and he's hit 3 for 3. His 4th one is up. Hits the rim, rolls over, comes out, and Harris taps it in. Harris just on the near side, tapped it in to make it 19-17, cutting the Kentucky lead to 2 points. Barker in the front part of the court, over to Barnstable, back out to Barker in the front line. Wheels, pivots, over to Beard, a bounce pass to Jones, who cuts along the foul circle. Hands it, goes under the basket, he lays her in, and he's fouled from the rear with an arm around the neck. Waiting to see it, will count. 21-17 is the basket by Groza will count. And we're seeing a tremendous game being played by Wawa Jones. Tremendous thinking game. Vernon Yates comes off the Aggies bench. Comes in replacing Vernon. Jack Shelton goes out. He's replaced by Vernon Yates. On the free throw line is Alex Groza for the Wildcats now. 3 minutes, 15 seconds remain in the half. Kentucky 21. The Aggies from Oklahoma A&M 17. Gail MacArthur comes in the Aggies lineup, replacing Joe Bradley now. Gail MacArthur, 6'1" Mangum, Oklahoma sophomore. Groza has one shot coming. Beard moves back into the safety. Sets out with T.L. Parks. The free throw by Groza is good. 22-17 Kentucky. The pass comes in off on the east side. To Jackwood, who moves in the front part of the court. Pass moves off to MacArthur over to Parks. And the screen by MacArthur not used. It goes into Harris on the pivot. He moves out along the foul line. A handoff to Yates, who sets, shoots high and no good. Hits the brace, comes out of there. Jones tips it over to Beard off on the side, who whips it up to Hirsch, who's in the Kentucky lineup. Now replacing Barnstable. The shot by Hirsch is no good. Rebounded on the side by Beard over to Groza. Groza moves into his right, and Harris hits him across the arms. Harris across the arms commits his third personal foul on Alex Groza with 2 minutes and 45 seconds to play. Hirsch has replaced Cliff Barker in the Kentucky lineup. The free throw by Groza hits the rim, comes out, but rebounded by Barnstable. He moves over to his right, flips her over to Groza, who whips off on the side to Hirsch off near the foul line. He gives it to Beard, and a one-hander by Beard hits the rim, comes out of there, no good. A fighting scramble for the ball. Groza spin shoots, it's good. Big Al Groza coming out from under the basket with her, whips her in there. Kentucky leads 24-17 over Oklahoma A&M with 2.5 minutes remaining in the first half. Jackwood over on the near side to MacArthur in the front court, who cuts to his right. Bradley fakes a break for the basket, but the pass goes in on the side to Bob Harris, and a foul is called under the A&M basket on Dale Barnstable of Kentucky. Committed against Gail MacArthur. That's the first one against Barnstable. 24-17 Kentucky. On the free throw lane, 6'1" Gail MacArthur, number 55. He eyes the mark. Shoots sideways with a right hand. It hits in there. Good, 24-18. The Aggies don't miss on the free throw lane. Beard in the front part of the court, over in the corner to Hirsch, who moves out. Flips one in the pivot to Groza. Catches him just a bit off guard, and is picked up off on the side by Vernon Yates. Over to MacArthur, and the Aggies are in possession of Harris back in the front line. Yates cuts, moves over to his right. Over to MacArthur. Still out deep in the front lines. Over to Jackwood. Moves out along the head of the circle. Flips through over to Harris. Off to the left of the circle. The pass comes over to Yates. He cuts into the right. A one-hander is short. No good, and rebounded off on the side by Hirsch for Kentucky. Jones doing a good guarding job on Tom Jackwood. Moves slowly up the backcourt now. Barnstable is out to the guard with Beard. Moves past the 10-second line. Flips her over to Beard to his left, back to Barker. Jones moves out along the head of the circle. Barnstable holds the ball and fires her into Jones off in the forward post. Jones holds the ball as Beard breaks in there with him. Flips to Barnstable, and Barney can't hold it. It goes out under the basket. Barnstable breaking open down the alley. It goes out to the Aggies. The pass comes in from MacArthur to Yates, who brings it past the 10-second line. Cuts over to his right. Gives her over to Parks. Back to MacArthur. And the pivot goes to Harris. He moves around as Jones comes in from the front. He gives it to Yates. Out to Jackwood. A minute and 20 seconds in the first half. Over to Yates in the front lines to MacArthur. He sets, flips her in right to the head of the circle to Harris. Over to Bradley. To Parks, rather, who cuts into his left. Can't shoot his Beard. Cuts him off. A one-hander by Jackwood from the head of the circle. Hits the rim. Bounds in the air. Groza goes up court with from Harris. The call is a jump between Harris and Groza. Here comes Joe Bradley back into the ball game. MacArthur goes out. Joe Bradley, 6'2" senior from Cowden, Oklahoma, back in the lineup to jump in the Aggies front court between the two captains and the two centers. The tip goes to Hirsch of Kentucky. He flips her over to Barnstable. He's holding the backcourt. Over to Beard now. 24-18, Kentucky leading the Oklahoma A&M Aggies. Beard right off the head of the circle, hands her over to Barnstable. Who cuts to his left, gives it to Hirsch, who breaks a break for the basket and flips her back out on the front lines to Beard, who sets with the ball momentarily. 1 minute to play in the first half. Beard cuts over to his left, flips her over to Hirsch, who moves out along the head of the circle, gives it to Barnstable, who cuts to his right, flips over on the side of Beard, who holds the ball and fakes a break into his right, moves out of there, flips back out to Barnstable in the front line, who cuts over to his left, pivots, gives right back to Beard to the right, back over on the side of Barnstable. He flips her into Jones. Jones cuts out along the head of the circle, flips in the pivot to Groza, who moves around Harris. He's caught it under the backboards, and he tries to shoot, but Yates moves in from the front. They're calling Yates And Harris, the foul is going to be charged against Bob Harris from the rear. Harris was trying to cover Groza from the rear when his teammate, Vernon Yates, slipped in from the front. That is 4 personals now against Bob Harris. Rated by his coach as one of the greatest defensive centers in college basketball. 25-18 as Groza connects with the free throw lane. Kentucky leading with only 30 seconds to play. In on the side it goes to J.L. Parks. He cuts over to his right. One-hander is good. Parks plays a one-hander in. And now the Kentucky lead at 25-20. Along with the front part of the court to Groza. The moves into his right. Breaks in under the basket. Harris corners him. Leans back in and can't quite make it. Harris gets the rebound. Hirsch and Groza both move in and tie him up. They're calling a foul under the jump ball, rather. Groza jumping with Harris. Only 5 seconds to play in the first half. Hirsch tips her out to Beard. Back over to Hirsch. Hirsch flips a one-hander. He tips the board. Comes off on the near side. Rebounded by Bradley. He flips up to Parks from the half end. Bradley holding the ball right at the midcourt stripe for Oklahoma A&M. And the halftime score, 25-20, with the Kentucky Wildcats out on top by a 5-point margin. Kentucky leading 25-20. Here at halftime. We'll be back in just a moment with individual scoring honors. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we believe WKLX is the only Kentucky station at the scene of play here in Seattle, Washington, Edmondson Pavilion. And since to our knowledge, this is the farthest broadcast ever originated by a local and independent station, we want to acknowledge with special thanks our 2 sponsors who send you the game, Purcell's and Dixie Ice Cream, through the facilities of WKLX, Lexington, Kentucky. You know, right now, Purcell's pays tribute to Mr. Hope Wiedemann, Jr., another member of Purcell's staff of managers. Mr. Wiedemann, who has been with Purcell's for a year and a half, is the superintendent of the store in charge of personnel and supplies. Previous to this, Mr. Wiedemann worked 4 years in Piqua, Ohio, with the Wood, Shovel, and Tool Company. Purcell salutes Mr. Hope Wiedemann, Jr. Well, basketball fans, this is the national championship game of the National Collegiate Athletic Association to settle the national championship of these United States. In the opening game this afternoon between the East and the West, Illinois won 3rd place by a 4-point margin over the Beavers of Oregon State, 57-53. Well, right about this time, which is just about 12:30 back in Lexington, it reminds us that this is just about a swell time for Dixie Ice Cream. And here's a stimulating idea for about any hour of the day or night with Dixie Ice Cream. Serve the perfect dessert with Dixie Ice Cream that's available in a variety of delicious flavors. Your family will appreciate your thoughtfulness when you add Dixie Ice Cream to your shopping list. Precious vitamin A, riboflavin, proteins, calcium, and other essential minerals are in nutritious Dixie Ice Cream. Build your family's health by serving it often. Remember, there's a Dixie dealer near you. The ceremonies here at halftime will be the individual presentation of mementos of the consolation game to members of the Oregon State and the Illinois squad. Commissioner of the Big Ten and Secretary-Treasurer of the NCAA is Tug Wilson. While they're making the presentation to 3rd place Illinois in the NCAA and 4th place Oregon State, here's the individual scoring honors for the first half of the game. The big gun for both teams has been Alex Groza with a total of 15 points of his teammates' 25. Groza has his 15 points on 6 field goals and 3 out of 4 at the free throw lane. 15 points for Captain Alex Groza at halftime, 6 field goals, 3 for 4 at the free throw lane. Second place honors for Kentucky, jointly held by Ralph Beard and Cliff Parker, the 2 guards, with 3 points. Beard has 1 for 1 at the free throw lane and 1 field goal, and the same for Cliff Parker, the old ball hawk and magician, who has 1 field goal and 1 for 1 on the free throw lane. Wallace Jones has missed his only free throw attempt, but has added 2 points, and Jim Line has added 2 points to round out the score of Kentucky at 25 points in the first 20 minutes of play against the old possession ball club, as they say, hold the ball, IBA. For the IBA hold the ball players, Bob Harris, the other pivot man and captain of the Cowpokes, is high point man with 7 points. He has 3 field goals off Groza and 1 for 1 on the free throw lane. Second place honors for the Aggies go to J.L. Parks, the 6-foot guard, who has 5 points on 2 field goals, 1 for 1 at the free throw lane. And third place honors for the Aggies belong to Joe Bradley, the other guard, at 6 feet 2 inches tall. He has 3 points, all of them at the free throw lane. 3 out of 5 for Joe Bradley. The other scoring for Oklahoma A&M has been Vernon Yates with 2 points on 1 field goal, Jack Shelton with a field goal on a free throw, and Gil MacArthur, the substitute guard, 1 point, 1 for 1 at the free throw lane to round out a total of 20 points for the Aggies from Stillwater, Oklahoma. The halftime score, the Kentucky Wildcats 25, Oklahoma A&M 20. You know, basketball fans, never before has there been such an outstanding Kentucky basketball team. And in years to come, people will still be talking about that outstanding 1948-49 group of boys. We want to tell you how to keep that memory even more permanent with one of the dinner plates with the team's picture on it from Purcell's basement. It's a 10-inch plate with an ivory background, a gold band, and overglaze for lasting effect. And centered in this plate is a picture of the present University of Kentucky team, complete with the players, the coaches, and the manager, and even the names. It's suitable for hanging, for display. This plate is found only in Purcell's basement. The cost, just $3. Get yours first thing Monday, won't you? For your own home and for special gifts. It's another Purcell exclusive. The 10-inch dinner plate featuring the present Kentucky basketball team, now found in Purcell's basement for only $3. Here at halftime, the score is Kentucky 25 and Oklahoma A&M 20. And for our last member of the Wildcat basketball squad that will be leaving this year by graduation, we want to take you behind the scenes in the life of Cliff Barker. Cliff is known to his teammates as Bart. He's a wizard with a basketball, whether on the court or just holding it for the field. Cliff is considerably older than any other member of the squad. Bart is 28 years old. That in itself tells a great deal about the Yorktown, Indiana product. Cliff was a member of the Army Air Force during the war, and he saw a great deal of service. He was a prisoner of the war for 16 months when he was shot down over Germany. It's interesting to talk with Bark about his experience, although he relates them much the same as any other veteran. But all the time he's talking, you find yourself thinking, how could this guy possibly get out of all that and then come home and play 3 years of championship basketball on the greatest team in the history of the sport? Barker is a man. He's a great competitor and one of the finest passers in basketball that we've ever seen. Bark will tell you that sometimes a sergeant, a prisoner of the Germans, will get a little hungry. He was in none too good physical condition when he returned to the States. Barker was one of 4 that lived when his B-24 was shot down over the target. Barker bailed out, and from that time on, he had rather rough going. But he bounced back from it all to make one of the top players in a sport that's known for its demand on energy. Cliff Barker, though, was much the same in his high school athletics. He was quite a baseball player and had quite a name for his ability as a pitcher. A few weeks ago, we were talking about with Cliff and his charming wife, Meredith. It was Meredith, though, that told me the story that climaxed Bark's high school baseball career. There are 2 high schools around Yorktown, Indiana, and there's quite a baseball rivalry between the 2. It seems that this particular year, everything was building up to a tremendous pitch over the up-and-coming baseball series, with a champion having to win the best 2 out of the 3 series. And then it happened. Bark broke his arm. That meant the old home team was without a pitcher. But after Cliff argued he could pitch, even with a broken arm, the coach finally asked his mother. She said if that's the way Cliff wanted it, she would give her consent. By this time, Yorktown had lost the first game. Well, they strapped the left arm tightly to Barker's body, and he went to work in the second game. When the smoke and dust had cleared away, Yorktown had won the game, and as Meredith puts it, it's the wonderful Barker who had pitched a 2-hit game with one arm tied behind him. Well, that evened the series at 1 game apiece. Barker, with that same gloomy future, strolled to the mound the next day with his left arm taped to his chest. Again, Barker went to work, and this time it happened. He scored the winning run in the 9th inning after pitching 1 hit ball. And that seems to typify Cliff Barker of Kentucky. He's a great competitor. It was while Cliff was overseas that he learned most of his tricks for the basketball. In the prison compound, they had a volleyball, and Cliff had quite a few hours to fiddle around with the round ball. And then they started playing games around the camp, but he says they weren't too good because the British made up most of their compound, and they would play only if Barker was on their side. Out of all this, Barker started quite a chain reaction. He was cornered one day by a bunch of his admirers, who want him to tell them about their experiences overseas. Well, he ran through about the usual story, but then, which is typical of Barker, he told them that Hitler saw them playing one day and thought it would be a good thing to have a tournament. Cliff's story is that his team won the championship, and Adolf Hitler himself presented the trophy. That, of course, started the wild stories about the trophy that Hitler gave Cliff Barker. Finally, the light of day shone through the overcast, but Barker had accomplished his end, making a good story and getting good jokes across. Cliff, of course, takes a lot of kidding about his age. Just at the close of the regular season in the game with Xavier in Cincinnati Gardens, when the Wildcats were as flat as could be, the old ball hawk went to work. In the last 5 minutes, with the Wildcats trailing by 2 points, Cliff whipped in 3 field goals, and Kentucky then started to roll. Right after he'd hit the third one, Beard was on the free throw lane for the blue and white, and Barker was off on the side in his usual position. He was just about 10 feet in front of the Xavier band when one of the boys jumped up waving a trombone, yelling, "You dirty old so-and-so." Well, Barker said that was okay. As a matter of fact, he laughed. But it just proves they always bring up my age. Cliff owns his own home just off Henry Clay Boulevard on Sparks Road in Lexington, and is pretty crazy about a little Cocker Spaniel, Cap, which is short for captain. He's a great guy and a great ball player. And we, incidentally, are pulling for Cliff to stay around Lexington when he graduates this June. The old man has meant a terrific amount to these great Kentucky Wildcats. Here's the percentage of shots in the first half. The high percentage goes to Oklahoma A&M. Kentucky has hit 10 out of 31 attempts for a 32% completion average. The Aggies, however, have fired only 21 times tonight in the first 20 minutes of play, averaging just slightly better than a shot per minute. They've connected on 7 of their 21 and have a 33.3 average here at halftime. The percentages: Oklahoma A&M is hitting 33, the Kentucky Wildcats hitting 32%, with Kentucky beating 25-20 in the finals of the championship game. The broadcast is coming to you directly from Edmondson Pavilion on the campus of the University of Washington, Seattle, Washington, to the facilities of WKLX, Lexington, Kentucky. Well, you know, naturally, you watch your youngsters' teeth for signs of decay. As an aid to firm, healthy teeth, give them Dixie ice cream often. This nutritious dairy food contains generous quantities of calcium, which is essential for strong bones and teeth. Serve Dixie ice cream. It's a favorite with young and old alike. It's the cream of the bluegrass. And don't forget Dixie Brick ice cream. Dixie Brick ice cream is already sliced. There are 16 slices to the half-gallon carton. Each slice is individually wrapped in Dixie stamped parchment paper and ready to serve. Dixie Brick ice cream is ideal for parties and ideal for clubs and dinners, too. Dixie also has brick ice cream in the solid vanilla slice and the 3-layer combination slice of vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. So remember to stop by your neighborhood Dixie dealer. There's a Dixie dealer in your neighborhood. Basketball fans, we want to remind you, too, since it's getting rather late at this hour, Sunday morning, that the broadcast will be heard again, complete, the NCAA Finals from Seattle, Washington, tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. The broadcast is being completely transcribed, and you'll be able to hear it throughout Central Kentucky tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time at 1300 on your dial, WKLX. And speaking of the Kentucky Wildcats, we want to mention, too, the Junior Chamber of Commerce Testimonial Dinner at the Lafayette Hotel, which is on April the 11th, Monday, at 6:30 p.m. The tickets are on sale at Purcell's Service Desk. The price is $5 each. Don't forget, the tribute to the Wildcats, the Junior Chamber of Commerce Testimonial Dinner at the Lafayette Hotel, 6:30 on Monday, April the 11th. You can get your tickets, only $5, at Purcell's Service Desk. And don't forget the Welcome Home Fund for the Kentucky Wildcats. For all of those who have contributed, we want to say thanks and thanks again for your donation to the Wildcats Welcome Home Fund. The fund which is being gathered up to give a real welcome home to these lads who have made such a tremendous name for the state of Kentucky and for Lexington in particular. So if you haven't already sent in your contribution to the Wildcat Welcome Home Fund, do so immediately. Why not sit right down right now and send that contribution in to WKLX, Lexington, Kentucky. Just address it to the Wildcat Welcome Home Fund. Purcell's pays tribute to Mr. I.L. Vonderheide and Mr. Paul Freeman. Say, here's a man we want to talk with. Mr. Wilkie, how are you doing tonight? This is Mr. Lou Wilkie, who the Kentucky Wildcats got to know awfully well last year. They were on a boat, in the same boat, for an awfully long time. That's Mr. Lou Wilkie, who was head of the Olympic Committee last year.
Well, I sure remembered my trip to Lexington and that great crowd at Lexington last summer. That was one of the spectacles of all time, I think, in America, and it proved that summer basketball can go. And I want to say to you folks on KIRO that Kentucky has got that hucklebuck and Spizzerink tonight. I think they're a little bit more up for this game than Oklahoma A&M. And I just noticed here that I did go kind of on the WKLX. And growth has been terrific in this first half. If they can't stop, if A&M can't stop Alex's last half, I think Kentucky's in. Kentucky's not playing their usual fast break. And if Oklahoma A&M intends to win this ball game with that pressing defense of Coach Adolph Rupp, they're going to have to shoot over Kentucky in order to win the ball game. I'm confident of that. And I want to say to all you Kentucky fans that is the greatest bunch of boys that it ever was my pleasure to be with. And Adolph, of course, is Thompson coach. It's sure good to be here, and a lot of luck to all you good folks down in dear old Kentucky.
Thank you very much, Lou. Basketball fans, that was Lou Wilkie, who spent a great deal of time last summer as Olympic chairman of the entire Olympic basketball team for the United States. And he knows the Wildcats pretty well. We had an opportunity to be with him quite a while this day at noon in the hotel in downtown Seattle. And Lou was really telling us what a great bunch of guys he thought the Kentucky Wildcats were, rather confirming what we've believed for an awfully long time. We're ready to get the second half of the game underway, holding up momentarily to check the starting lineups for both teams. Broadcast of the championship game. Coming to you directly from Seattle, Washington, Jim Wine comes back into the Kentucky lineup. And Cliff Barker's back in. Jim Line, Barker, both back into the Kentucky lineup. Hurst and Barnstable back into the reserve. We're ready to go now. The lineup of the Aggies remain the same. Beard gets the tip as the game opens up. Over to Jones, back to Beard to Barker. The Wildcats on the move now on the front line to bounce fast and on the side to Jones, who hands off to Barker. He moves out back in the front lines to Beard again, who cuts over to his left, out deep in the front lines. Beard holds the ball steadily, sets his play up as Groza moves in on the pivot. The pass goes in on the bounce pass to Jones. He comes to the head of the circle. Pivots and gives out to Barker in the front lines over to Beard to his left. Kentucky sets her up again, leading 25-20 as we get the second half underway. The championship NCAA game. A bounce pass from Beard to Barker goes out of bounds as Joe Bradley moves in, taps it out on the dribble as the pass comes in from Beard. Goes out to Kentucky off to the left of their own backboard and over the end line to the offensive court. The pass comes into Jones. He races to get it drawn. He can't do it. The pass comes into the back of Jones as he was breaking to the basket. The pass comes in as the Aggies go on the attack for the first time in a half to Bob Harris. Back over to Parks, to Jackwood, to Bradley. On the far side of Harris, under the basket to Parks. Parks the ball out of his hands and on the floor. Goes on the floor with it. Beard goes. He gets it. Still a scramble for the ball. J.L. Parks makes a dive for that ball and hooks it in there. There's something you'll very, very seldom see. Parks left his feet completely to get that loose ball. That's how much possession means to this game when you're playing the Aggies. Both boys missed the tip as Parks jumps into Barker and knocks him back down the alley about 5 feet. He turns around and says he's sorry, and Bark moves down. That's the second one falls on 6-foot J.L. Parks on the free throw lane. Cliff Barker for the Wildcats. He has one of them coming. Kentucky 25, A&M 20. Off on the side now. Beard back in the safety for Kentucky as Barker eye shoots. It hits the rim, rolls, hesitates, and drops in. 26-20 Kentucky. The Aggies back on the move now. Rapidly up the backcourt. Vernon Yates cuts over to his left. Puts in on the side to Parks, back to Yates in the corner, out in the front lines to Jacket, who moves along the head of the circle, over to Bradley, and the side to Harris. He moves out, comes along the foul circle. Again over to Yates, who moves into the corner. Jones corners him out in the front lines to Jackwood, still moving it rapidly and very fast, still maintaining definite possession of the ball. Out in the front lines, he comes to Bradley. Barker makes a stab, can't get it. In on the side to Harris. He moves into the corner. Rosa loosens up on him defensively. Barker from the front can't get into him, though, as he comes out to Bradley. Over to Yates along the head of the circle. On the near side along the foul line, it goes to Harris. He moves out. Gives out on the front lines to Bradley. A foul called in under the basket on Beard. Pushing on J.L. Parks of the Aggies. One shot coming to Parks. Opening the first 2 minutes of play in the second half of the game, and Kentucky's leading 26-20. Parks shoots his free throw. It's good. 26-21. Kentucky still leading by 5 points, holding and maintaining the lead at halftime. Beard moves in the front part of the court. A whistle as he tries to split between Bradley and Parks. They're calling it on J.L. Parks. They call Parks for blocking on Beard. The fans boo because Beard had that gun rolling mighty fast, and he was blasting the alley. The foul is being charged against Parks. That's 3 of them. Beard misses his free throw. Jim Line taps it up and in. Jim Line, who recovered. Beard free throws, bounce pass through the alley. Took her and later in to send Kentucky ahead 28-21 as Yates brings it in the front part of the court. Over to Bradley, to Tom Jackwood. In on the far side again to Yates. Who moves out along the foul line, hands through over to Parks. Who cuts to his right, goes into the corner. Back out on the front lines against Joe Bradley. Barker moves with him. Bradley breaks for the basket. Barker goes back with him. Throws the ball up. It hits on the rim. The foul was called on Barker. Ball pushing off on Bradley. That's 4 of them on Cliff Barker. 4 of them on Bob Harris for the Aggies now. Kentucky 28, Oklahoma A&M 21. 2 minutes, 17 seconds of playing time going by in the second half. The free throw is missed. Tapped up once by Harris. Comes off on the side. Taken by Beard. He whips her over to Jones. Kentucky in possession in the front court to Barker. At the head of the circle, a hand over the side to Jones. He flips over in the corner. A one-hander by Line. Hits the rim. Bounds in the end. No good. Bradley rebounds easily for Oklahoma A&M. Over to Parks. Moves past the 10-second line. The Aggies back in possession. Over to Harris. A one-hander at the head of the circle. Hits the rim. Comes out. No good. He rebounds right in the same spot. Flips it up again. It hits the rim. Bounds in the air. No good. Yates taps it up. No good. And Groza rebounds for Kentucky. Left her over to Jones. Kentucky's back on the move now as the pass goes over to Barker to Beard in the front part of the court. Back to Barker, who cuts to his right, sets her up. Moves in, doesn't get to Jones, takes the screen, doesn't use it, over to Beard. He cuts to his left, flips off to Jim Line, and moves over. Pivots around, pivots. Getting away from Yates, and he hooks into Groza. The pivot on the hook shot, rolls over the rim, no good. Jones taps it up once, twice. Line jumps, throws it up, still no good. Groza lays it up, still no good as it rolls over the near side of the rim. Harris rebounds at Jim Line, and voila, Jones both time up before he can move out of there. Here's Gail MacArthur coming into the Aggies lineup, and he replaces Vernon Yates, the 6'4" senior. Gail MacArthur, a sophomore from Mangum, Oklahoma, who stands 6'1" in the Aggies lineup at forward. Jump between Harris and Line in the offensive court. There's a foul called on Beard, jumping to try and get the ball away from J.L. Parks on the tip. They call Beard for his second personal. Jumping into Parks, who'll be on the Aggies free throw lane with Kentucky leading 28-21. And the Aggies beginning their pressing defense now with Kentucky holding the 7-point lead, the longest one of the game. One shot coming to J.L. Parks. Back in the double safety is MacArthur, Tom Jackwood. Parks on the free throw line, shoots between the knees. It gets the rim short. No good. Jones taps it behind him to Barker. Holds the ball momentarily, flips her over to Groza to Beard. Kentucky's back on the move now and slowing it down as Beard crosses into the attack court for the Wildcats. A bounce pass over the line, back to Beard, who cuts into the basket. Parks cuts him off, though, over the line in the corner. MacArthur moves in him. Line moves back out in the corner. Over to Barker. Jones goes on the floor under the basket, and they call Barker for walking. Goes out over the end line for the Aggies. MacArthur whips one in the front part of the court to Harris, who cuts over to his left. Gives it to Parks, over to MacArthur. Out deep in the front lines to Bradley, over to Harris. Harris jumps, a one-hander falling away, hits the rim, no good, and Groza rebounds for Kentucky. Pivots around there, gets the ball away from Parks. And finally MacArthur then flips it to Barker for Kentucky. The Wildcats are back in the attack now, still leading 28-21. 16 minutes remaining to play. Beard to Jones in the front part of the court. In the field, it goes to Groza. He spins. Harris goes with him. Groza lays it in, breaking into the basket. It's good, and he's fouled. We believe by Harris. Let's see. Hold it up a minute. Waiting for the official to signify the basket will count 30-21. And that is 5 of them on Big Bob Harris, the 6'7" Aggies pivot man. Alex Groza took only 4 minutes to get rid of Harris. In the second half, 4 minutes after Harris had his fourth one, the timeout is being called for the Aggies. Coming off the Aggies bench to come in will be Jack Shelton, the junior from Stillwater, Oklahoma, who stands 6 feet 6 inches tall. The Timeout for the Aggies with the score Kentucky 30, Oklahoma A&M 21. And at this time, Purcell's pays tribute to Mr. I.L. Vonderhyde and Mr. Paul Freeman. Mr. Vonderhyde, the advertising manager of Purcell's and the one responsible for all the Purcell ads you see, has worked there for 16 years. Previous to this, Mr. Vonderhyde was advertising manager of the McKibben Stenning Company in Charleston, West Virginia, and he also worked for the Marshall Field Company in Chicago. Mr. Freeman, who's been with Purcell's over 3 years, is the display manager in charge of all windows and interior displays of merchandise. To you, Mr. Vonderhyde and Mr. Freeman, Purcell's tips its hat. Dale Barnstable comes into the Kentucky lineup, replacing Barker, who's out on the bench again for the Wildcats, resting with 4 personal fouls. Barnstable moves out to a guard with Ralph Beard. Jim Line, Wawa Jones, the forwards, and Alex Gross at the pivot. And it's Gross on the free throw lane with one shot coming to him. As Beard gets back into safety with J.O. Parks right there with him for the Aggies. Gross shoots. He puts English on it with a body, and it's good. 31-21. A 10-point lead for Kentucky and the longest one of the game. Tom Jackwit brings it in the Aggies' front court. Holds her up. Highman goes in the pivot this time. Off on the side of Jack Shelton. He spins around, but can't shoot. Gives it in the front part of the court to Parks. Over to Bradley. Back to Parks. And it goes in the pivot again to Shelton. He flips out to Jackwit. The fans beginning to yell, take some shots, as the Aggies still play hold the ball either system. And on the side it goes to Tom Jackwit. In the pivot off on the side of Ernie Yates. Goes and moves in with him. Back over to Jackwit. Back out on the front lines to Bradley. Who moves into his right. Hands off to Jackwit. Over to Parks. Still deep in the front lines. Beard loosens up into Shelton. Parks break by. The pass goes over to MacArthur. And a one-hander hits the rim. Bounds high in the air. Comes off. A scramble for the ball. Is taken by Yates. Lays it up. Misses. Jim Line takes it but can't hold on to it as it goes out of bounds. Line couldn't quite sink a finger on it tightly enough. It goes out to the Aggies under their own basket. Shelton out to put the ball in play. The pass on the side of Parks. He backs around, goes in, and Groza makes a beautiful block. Hit the ball beautifully, and he's called for a foul. Groza says, what? And then raises his hand, admitting that he committed it. From here, it looked like a beautiful block. The horn blows the score to check to make sure it was charged against Groza. That it was. That's 3 of them on Captain Alex Groza. On one shot coming to J.O. Parks. Shoots between the knees, hits the rim, and drops in. 31-22, Kentucky, leading the Aggies. Barnstable past the 10-second line for Kentucky. That's up in the front lines over to Beard, who holds the ball high over his head. Fakes one into Groza, gives it into Jones, breaking down the alley. He's knocked on the floor, and the ball goes out of bounds as Bradley hits him from the side. They give it out to... Wait a minute, the Aggies take it out and put it in play. There's a whistle back in the court from Cliff Ogden. And Ab Curtis moves out. And now we're going to have a jump. Alex Groza, who didn't have a hand on the ball, jumps. There's the tip. They call a put on the line and give it outside to the Aggies. The pass comes into MacArthur up in the front part of the court. A bounce pass in on the side of Shelton. He moves around in the pivot, spins around. Groza goes with him. He jumps. Groza bats the ball out of his hands and out of bounds. A beautiful block by Alex Groza of Kentucky. It goes out to the Aggies under their own basket. 6'6" Jack Shelton out to put the ball in play. Kentucky leading 31-22. And it comes to Jackwit over to Shelton. There's a foul. Ball against Groza from the rear on Jack Shelton. And now the Wildcats are in the trouble. Alex Groza has 4 personal fouls for the Wildcats. And the Aggies have revealed their hand at their strategy. They're feeding the ball constantly to the pivot with Shelton in there, fouling Groza out to get that height out of there. On the free throw lane, Shelton shoots. It's good. 31-23 the score, cutting the Kentucky lead to 8 points. 14 minutes and a half to play in the championship game of the NCAA. Here to Jones in the front part of the court. Highman the pivot. Groza behind Shelton. He lays her in, and he's fouled from the rear. The goal will count. As Cliff Ogden under the basket. Now it's good. 33-23 Kentucky. And the charges of J.O. Parks of the Aggies, and that's 4 of them on Parks. Walt Hurst comes off to the Kentucky bench. It's ready to come into the ball game. 14 and a half minutes to play. Kentucky 33, Oklahoma A&M 23. Grows on the free throw lane, shoots. It's good. 34-23, and Kentucky owns the longest lead of the game at 11 points. Walter Hurst comes in, and Alex Groza comes out. Gets a nice hand from the partisan fans along the west coast here of Seattle, Washington. The Aggies back in the move now. Jackwit brings it past the 10-second line. Whips it over to his right to Bradley. In the pivot on the high pass, it goes to Shelton. Jones on Shelton now. The pass goes into J.O. Parks. He breaks into Jones, and they call him for charging. Jones, a stalwart wall right at the basket. Parks tried to crack him and committed his 5th personal foul. That's all she wrote for J.O. Parks for the Aggies, who comes out, gets a shake from Dale Barnstable, and heads to the bench. The Aggies have now played 5 minutes and 45 seconds and still do not have a field goal in the second half. The Wildcats have a good defense, too, which we've contended all along. Jones was getting ready to shoot his free throw. The officials were permitting it when they realized the Aggies had only 4 men on the floor waiting for the substitute. Norman Ingram, a 5'10" sophomore from Stillwater, Oklahoma, comes into the lineup, losing some of the height, with Fiery J.L. Parks out of the lineup. On the line now, Jones for Kentucky, Bearden the safety, the free throw, good by Jones, and Kentucky comes out into the lead by 12 points at 35-23. In the front part of the court, Jackwit has the ball batted away from him by Barnstable, but Bradley comes into the rescue. The pass over to Pilgrim. Back out on the front lines to Bradley, who cuts over to his left. Barnstable hawking him on the defense. In along the foul line, it goes to Shelton. Back over to Bradley, breaking in. Back to Shelton off to the right. A pick off by Bradley. No good. Shelton's cornered by Barnstable and batted out of his hands and out of bounds. They call a jump ball between Shelton and Barnstable. Barnstable and Jones coming in on either side and chasing Shelton in over the end line and out of bounds. The jump in the Aggies' offensive court. The tip comes out deep in the front lines. Over to MacArthur. He holds the ball faster in the pivot. Barnstable bats it down, and Jim Line picks it up at Kentucky. Shuffle pass over to Barnstable. Holds the ball over his head. Flips her over to Jones. Back to Barney. And the Wildcats are back in the move now as Barnstable crosses into the attack court for Kentucky. Cuts over to his left. Flips her over to Beard, who cuts in the front line, then moves out along the head of the circle. Flips her over to Jim Line, who cuts to his left. Hands it over to Hirsch, who drives into his left alone. The end line jumps to shoot. The ball is kicked by MacArthur and goes out of bounds. MacArthur getting a hand, stabbing in and preventing the one-handed shot by Hirsch. The ball goes out to Kentucky. Barnstable out to put the ball in play. Looks for his man over to bounce pass in the line, and the one-hander rolls over the rim, no good. Jones taps it up, and it just comes off on the near side of the rim. Shelton goes with it, and Jones goes on the floor. Along with Hirsch, a jump ball call for the Kentucky offensive court. Pulled down. 6'6" Jack Shelton jumping with Hirsch to Kentucky. The toss and the tip comes over to MacArthur. To Jackwit, still in the backcourt. Over to Bradley. In the front quad of the court now, it goes to Norm Pilgrim. Back out to Jackwit. Over to MacArthur, who's off the head of the circle. Breaks in off on the side. The pass comes over on the side of Jackwit. Over to MacArthur. Stands out still off the head of the circle with people beginning to yell now more often, shoot it. To the Aggies, who are still playing their possession ball and behind 12 points. The pass goes into the pivot to Jackwit. There's a whistle and a foul against Jim Line of Kentucky. Line commits his second personal foul of the game from the rear on 6'4" Tom Jackwit, Jacquet. The Aggies still using the double safety. The free throw bounces off on the side. Hirsch tips it over on the side, but Barnstable had already made his break for the basket for the rebound and picked up by Jackwit. Over on the side of Bradley, who shoots, tips the rim, comes out of there, rebounded by Beard. He starts the fast break. He's tripped on the floor. Jones saves the ball and moves past the 10-second line. Moves into the head of the Kentucky circle. Whips over to his right to Beard. Rolls the ball on the front lines, then breaks over to the alley. Whips over to Jim Line and again goes on the floor. He breaks down the alley. Norm Pilgrim moves in and they call Beard for charging. Beard very viciously making stabs at the basket, trying to get in there, to get it down there. That's 3 of them on rapid route for the Wildcats. He moves in along the alley. 6'1" Gail MacArthur moves up to the free throw lane for the Aggies. Jackwit drifts back into the safety, and Norm Klein floats right back there with him. Or Norm Pilgrim, rather. 35-23, Kentucky. 12 minutes, 16 seconds to play in the NCAA National Championship game. The free throw by MacArthur hits the rim, bounces up and in. 35-24 the score, cutting the Kentucky lead to 11 points. Barnstable over to Beard. Kentucky's back on the move now. The Aggies still do not have a field goal in the second half. Barnstable over to Hirsch in the front part of the court in the right-hand corner to Beard. He comes moving out of there along the foul line over to Barnstable as that holds the ball over his head. Weaves over his right to Hirsch. Hirsch moves around to Barnstable again. Shelton playing in front with Jackwit of Jones in the pivot for the Kentucky. In the corner, it goes to Hirsch, bounce pass in the pivot. Now to Jones, a hand off to Barnstable. He's trapped under there as he goes in by MacArthur, Bradley, and Jackwit, who all tightened up the alley on that sinking defense. They call the foul on Joe Bradley of the Aggies. That's the first one on Bradley, and Barnstable has one shot coming. It's good. 36-24, and again restoring the Kentucky 12-point lead. Tom Jackwit takes the pass in from out of bounds, moves in the front part of the court. Pass over on the side to Pilgrim. Into Shelton. He moves around line, comes up from the rear, and ties him up. They call a foul, though, nonetheless. This is on Wawa Jones from the rear. Line had complete possession of the ball. So Shelton broke into the basket. And Wawa Jones is called from the rear, though, on Shelton. That's the first one called against Wawa Jones. Shelton shoots his free throw in. Good. 36-25 the score. Kentucky leading 11 points. As Beard gives to Barnstable in the front part of the Kentucky court. He moves over to his left and cuts to his right. Gives it to Beard. Beard set, shoots high, hits the rim, comes right back down the alley. Beard rebounds, but he goes on the floor. They call a foul on Beard. The fans applaud it. That's 4 of them on rapid Ralph Beard of Kentucky. He moves up to the Aggies free throw lane now. The fans still extremely partisan here along the West Coast, rooting for their West Coast team, not their West Coast team, but their Western team, the Aggies, on the line. Norm Pilgrim, one shot, shoots, and it's good. Drops in there, 36-26, and Kentucky's lead is whittled to 10 points now. 11 minutes and a half to play in the championship game. Barnstable a line, the front part of the court, into it to Jones. Shelton moves with him. Hurst picks it up, shoots it up there, no good. Line, Hurst all scramble for it. Hurst flips it up. Beard taps it up once, twice. Shelton gets it, and he's tied up from the side by Hurst, who came in from the front and tied him up. Shelton tied up, and he's jumping with Hurst in the Kentucky offensive court. Both boys jumped. No ball tossed up there, though. There's the tip going back under the Kentucky basket to MacArthur. He moves it up the backcourt now. Over on the near side to Jackwett, who flips into Bradley. He's still out deep in the front lines into Shelton. Deflected though by Barnstable. Picked up in the far corner by Pilgrim. Here hangs with him in the pivot to Shelton. He moves around there, shoots under Jones' arms. No good, and Jones takes it off of Kentucky. He moves over into the far corner with it now and slowly moves up the backcourt all by himself. The Aggies still not starting that pressing defense down in the backcourt. In the front part of the court now, Barnstable flips over to his right the line. The Aggies still do not have a goal in the second half, a field goal. To Barnstable, a set shot at the head of the circle. It's good. Barnstable, a set shot, gives Kentucky back that 12-point lead, 38-26. 10.5 minutes remain to play. The Aggies have not scored a field goal in the last 9.5 minutes of play in the second half of the game. In the front part of the court, Tom Jackwett sets it up. Over on the far side of MacArthur. In the pivot it goes to Shelton. He moves around, tries to shoot, falls. Jackwett picks it up, shoots a one-hander that's deflected off the rim. A scramble for the ball, picked up out on the front lines and over to Jackwett. He moves over Barnstable, jumps, bats the ball as it goes out of bounds. Let's see the decision. The Aggies under their own basket. Kentucky's defense, tighter than you'll ever see a defense. Kentucky, of course, has an offense to go with the defense. The pass comes in from Shelton on the side of Pilgrim. A high one back in the pivot. It goes to Shelton. He spins around there, spins away. Hurst blocks it from the front. They call him across the arms, though. Across the arms on Hurst. That's the first one against Walt Hurst of Kentucky. 9 minutes and 55 seconds remain in the championship game. MacArthur moves up to calls a timeout just before Jack Shelton shoots the first of his two free throws. Timeout, the Aggies. The score, Kentucky 38, Oklahoma A&M 26. Well, here's one way to make a hit with all your family. Serve Dixie ice cream for the perfect postscript to any meal. Every member of the household will delight in the creamy texture and delightful flavor of swell-tasting Dixie ice cream. So delicious, so nutritious, and so easy to serve. Buy Dixie ice cream at your grocery or drugstore tomorrow and keep it on hand in your refrigerator, ready for use at all times. Enjoy Dixie, the cream of the bluegrass. Be sure to keep Dixie on hand at all times. Dixie's available at your neighborhood Dixie dealer, the cream of the bluegrass. The Kentucky Wildcats 38, the Oklahoma A&M Aggies 26 for the national championship of these United States. Kentucky, the defending champion, and if Kentucky wins tonight, they will tie Oklahoma A&M as having been the second team to have won 2 NCAA championships. The Aggies won their 2 in 45 and 46. Kentucky won last year and defending this year. Jack Shelton on the line. The first shot's dead, and he connects it. Hits the rim, rolls in, 38-27 the score. Kentucky on top by 11 points. It'll be in play now. Beard wide of the alley, off to the left as Shelton Eyes shoots. Hits into the nets, good. 38-28 the score. The Aggies remain still dead at the free throw lane. Barnstable in the front part of the court of Kentucky. The Wildcats leading 38-28 over to Beard. In on the side, it goes to Jones, who moves in, shoots a one-hander, hits the rim, comes out of there, no good. Barnstable taps it up once, and it goes out of bounds under the Kentucky basket off Tom Jackwood's fingertips. It'll go out to the Aggies. It goes all the way into the back court of the pavilion. The clock stops with 9 minutes, 37 seconds to play. Before Kentucky puts it back in play, the Aggies still do not have a field goal in the second half. Barnstable out to put the ball in play, flips one into Hirsch off to the left of the circle. He hands it over to Beard, who moves out in the front line, hooks her over to Jim Line. In on the side to Wawa Jones, who's playing a terrific game. He moves out into the head of the circle, pivots, moves away from Shelton, then flips her over to Barnstable. Barnstable weaves back and forth and moves out in the front line. Here comes to Beard. He holds it over his head, gives her into Jones. He moves off the head of the circle, over to Barnstable, who cuts to his right, breaks into the basket. As Bradley goes with him, he pulls up to the right, flips her over to Jones, who moves out of there into the protective position, turns around, flips to Barnstable in the corner, sends the ball over his head, then moves out on the front line, pivots, a bounce pass into Jones. He moves through the bottom of the circle, goes in there. Jackwett closes up with MacArthur. Hurst picks the ball up, puts it up there. No good. MacArthur picks it up, and Jones ties him up. The whistle, a foul against Jones across the arms. That's 2 of them on Wawa Jones of Kentucky. 38-28 the score. 9 minutes exactly remain in the championship game. All the way up now to the Cowpokes front court. On the free throw lane is Norm Pilgrim, Pilgrim. 1 shot coming. Still the double safety of MacArthur and Jackwood for the Aggies. The free throw, it's good. 38-29, and Kentucky's lead is whittled now to only 9 points. Beard moves up, past the attack marker. Flips her over to his left to Barnstable. As Groza comes off the bench, over to Jim Line. And moves out to his left along the head of the circle and cuts, moves back to his left. Hooks her in the pivot to Jones. Who spins, moves, and jump shoots. It's a bit short, though, deflected. Line and Hurst tap it up on the boards once, twice. Still no good. Jackwood gets it. Jones moves in from the front of him. Groza comes into the game. They call a foul on Kentucky. They call it on Jones of Kentucky. And there's Jones coming out, and Alex Groza comes into the lineup. Wallace Jones played a tremendous game for the Wildcats. Comes out of there. Two of the regulars on the bench now, Jones and Barker. The Kentucky lineup. Groza at pivot. Hirsch and Line at the forwards. Barnstable and Beard at the guards. One shot comes to Tom Jackwood of the Aggies. Chance to cut the Kentucky lead to 8 points. He shoots. It's good. 38-30 the score, and Kentucky's lead is down to 8 points now. Barnstable moves in the front part of the court. Sets it over to his right to Beard, who holds the ball high over his head. Shelton playing in front of Groza. They can't get the pass in. Over to Hirsch to Beard. It cuts to his right. Back to Barnstable at the head of the circle. It cuts over to his left. Fakes one to line. Pivots. Gives it to Beard. Groza in the pivot. His Beard flips over to Barnstable. Back to Beard. Groza moves in the pivot again. Over to Hirsch to Barnstable. Off to his left. Barnstable playing over on the other side of the basket. Barnstable moves in. A one-hander comes out no good as it hits the rim and spins off Bradley. Rebounds for the Aggies. Hirsch cuts one over the midcourt stripe for Kentucky. Gets it back in possession over to Jim Line, who moves in. He's fouled by Bradley. Charging on Bradley. Joe Bradley of the Aggies commits his second one against Jim Line of Kentucky. The old southpaw's on the free throw lane for the Wildcats. Beard moves back near the midcourt stripe. Hill champing at the bit with that gum. Glances at the clock. 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Line shoots. It's good. 39-30. Kentucky leading by 9 points. In the front part of the court now. Pilgrim sets it up. Moves over to his left. Still out deep in the front lines. Over to Bradley, to MacArthur. In the pivot to Shelton. He spins around, moves along the head of the circle. Back and forth, trying to get Groza to foul him. Shelton moves back and forth, then flips one. High in the front lines, over to Shelton, who moves around, goes under the basket, jumps to shoot. It's good. Shelton finally came in from the back of those boards and later in for the Aggies. 39-32. Kentucky leading the lead, cut to 7 points now, and that's the first field goal in the second half for Oklahoma A&M. Out of Barnstable, the front line from Beard over on the near side of Jim Line. He protects the ball with the full length of his body, then moves into the corner, flips her out to Barnstable. Line holds the ball cautiously, then over the line. Line holds the ball high over his head, flips into the corner to Hirsch, who moves out of there. Flips her in the pivot to Groza, who spins around there, shoots from under the boards. It's no good. But they call a foul, we believe, on Shelton. Under the pivot is Parker. Comes off the Kentucky bench, reports to the scoring, comes in replacing Barnstable. Cliff Parker, the 6'2" senior from Yorktown, Indiana. Dale Barnstable comes out. Parker and Beard at the guards now. Grows at the pivot. Hirsch and Line. They call the foul against Jack Shelton of the Aggies. That's 3 of them, and Groza shoots his single free throw. Good. 40-32. Kentucky leading by 8 points. 7 minutes, 20 seconds to play. The NCAA championship game from Seattle, Washington. Over to MacArthur in the front line, to Hyman the pivot now to Shelton. He jockeys around, turns around, breaks in there. Line moves in, he passes into Line and Groza both and goes onto the floor. There's the whistle on the foul is called against Shelton for charging. The Aggies are still trying the strategy of feeding the ball into Shelton, and Shelton handles the ball a great deal into the pivot, dribbling back and forth, of course. That's trying to get Groza to commit his 5th personal foul. Vernon Yates comes back in. Tom Jackwood is out. Vernon Yates back into the Aggies lineup, replacing Jackwood. Groza has 1 free throw. That's 4 of them now. On Jack Shelton, the free throw is good by Groza. 41-32 Kentucky, getting back a 9-point lead. Back in the front part of the court now. MacArthur sets it up for the Aggies. Flips over to his left. On the side to Yates. In the middle, shoot on the hook shot. Comes down, no good. And Groza rebounds for the Wildcats. Hooks her over to Barker, who starts up past the 10-second line for the Wildcats. Cuts over to his left. Pivots, flips over to Beard in the corner to Hirsch. The moves out there, flips to Beard, who had cut away from it. The ball goes bounding out of bounds to Parker going for it. With Norm Pilgrim, it'll go out to the white team, the Aggies. Joe Bradley out, flips her into MacArthur. The cowpokes are on the move now with 6.5 minutes to play. A high one to Shelton in the pivot. He moves around there, Groza taps the ball out of his hands, picked up by Hirsch, knocked out of Hirsch's hand, who had scramble on the floor for the ball, and Barker is hit a hard blow as he gets the ball over to Groza, who lays it in for Kentucky. Barker was hit in the backcourt. Not hurt, though, as Kentucky leads 43-32. Groza laying her in under the basket. A high one to Shelton in the pivot. The ball bounds on the floor. He flips it back out on the front line. To MacArthur, to Bradley. Back over to Pilgrim. In the pivot it goes to Shelton now. He moves around. Line comes in from the front. He flips her back out to Yates, who holds the ball over his head. Then flips one back to Shelton, the pivot. Groza pivot, spread him. Line comes up from the front. They call Groza from the rear. Groza commits his 5th personal foul from the rear on Shelton. And that's all. Rosa gets a beautiful hand. Wawa Jones comes off the Kentucky bench to replace Captain Alex Rosa, who commits his 5th personal foul. Well, the tremendous booing that went up there was for the officials mostly. 6 minutes and 5 seconds remain to play. Kentucky 43, Oklahoma A&M 32. The Wildcats move out the lineup now of Barker and Beard at the guard. Wawa Jones will be in the pivot. Walt Hirsch and Jim Line will be at the forward. The Aggies move out now. They're trailing the Wildcats by 11 points now. Jack Shelton's on the free throw lane for the Cowpokes. They still use the double safety. Pilgrim and MacArthur both back into the safety. Rosa goes out of the game with a total of 28 points. Rosa made 28 points against what Hank Iba considers the greatest defensive center in the country. The free throw good by Shelton. 43-33. A 10-point lead to Kentucky. Spear takes the pass in for Hirsch. The Aggies are on the defensive now as Barker takes the pass from Beard. Fakes it over to Johnson, whips over to Beard, the line. Line hands off to Barker, breaking into the basket. A whip over to Johnson to the near side corner. Over the line, back to Barker. Kentucky begins to use a lot of short, rapid passes. Barker pivots, gives it back to line, over to Beard. Still off the head of the circle. Beard holds it. Gives her over to Barker, who's left. In on the side of Jones. Back to Barker, breaking for the basket. A one-hander by Barker is blocked by Yates and taken off right there, right at the end line. He flips it over to MacArthur to Pilgrim in the front part of the court. Moves into the head of the circle. Flips off on the side to Bradley, who can't get a shot. Back out to MacArthur. Over in the front line to Yates, who comes to his right at the head of the circle. Hyman to Shelton, the pivot. Moves around. Barker bats the ball out of his hands, and it's picked up by Hirsch over to Beard at the mid-court stripe. Beard moves into the attack court and sets her up right there as he slows it down. With 5 minutes and 20 seconds to play. Kentucky 43, Oklahoma A&M 33. Out to Barker in the front lines and over to Beard on the near side of the court. He waves the ball over his head and flips it back over to Barker. Back to Beard out deep in the front line. Beard fakes one to Barker. Barker stabs for the basket. Bradley makes the cut to get the ball off. Back over to Barker to Beard. The Aggies playing the defense a little bit tighter now. Over to Jones. Back to Barker. Barker cuts over to his left. Fires with a Jim Line. Line cuts to his right. The ball is batted out of his hands. They call Line for palming the ball as it's batted out of his hands. It's a outside court to MacArthur of Oklahoma A&M. We believe they're going to call a technical foul on the Kentucky bench. Cliff Ogden moves over. It's a technical foul against Kentucky's bench. Jack Shelton steps up to the free throw lane to take the technical. Fans are on their feet. The free throw by Shelton is no good. Comes out of there. So it's naught for naught. It'll be the Aggies ball out, however, on the technical. 43-33 the score. 10 points. Norm Pilgrim out to put the ball into the Aggies at the 10-second line. He flips her in, over to MacArthur, over to Bradley, in the front lines, in the pivot goes to Shelton. He pivots around, charges in, Line comes from the front. There's another foul. Call against Jim Line across the arm. That's 3 of them on Line. 4 minutes and 47 seconds to play. 43-33 the score. Kentucky out on top by 10 points. One shot for Shelton. The eye slips her up between the knees, and this one rolls in. 43-34. Kentucky leading by 9 points. The finals of the NCAA championship game from Edmondson Stadium, Seattle, Washington. Barker in the front part of the court. Bradley moves up from the rear. He flips her over the line, though. Line pivots out of there, hands her over to Barker, who cuts to his right. Over to Hirsch. Still that Aggie defense getting tighter and tighter. Barker takes in, breaks for the basket. Bradley hooks the ball out of his hands and out of bounds. They'll go out to the Wildcats. The clock stops. 4 minutes and a half to play. The pass comes in from Barker to Hirsch, and the one-hander is good by Hirsch, who quickly unloaded a one-hander over to the right about 20 feet for Kentucky. 45-34 with the Wildcats on top. 11 points. In the front part of the court, Bradley stabs through a basket. He's cut off. Flips her back to Yates in the front lines. Over to MacArthur. MacArthur cuts to his left wide open. Doesn't shoot. Hirsch taps that ball out of his hands and out of bounds. It goes out to Kentucky. Beard and Barker bring it up the backcourt over the line. Pass to the 10-second line. He pulls up, then flips it to Barker as he crosses the midcourt stripe. Barker cuts over to his right. Whips it to Beard. And on the side, it goes to the line. He moves into the corner. Pivots, gives her on a bounce pass over to Hirsch, who moves out to Beard. Beard still off to the right, moves into the right. Then pivots, comes back there. Takes one to Barker, then holds up, and then Barker's able to get in to break for the pass, and it goes over to Barker, to Hirsch, back to Barker, who cuts over to his right, holds the ball and flips her out deep in the front lines to Beard on a snappy push pass, and the pivot goes to Jones right up the head of the circle. Jones turns around. He can't shoot as Yates holds out on him. Over to Hirsch, to Barker. Barker's fouled by Bradley, trying to steal the ball, as the Wildcats are giving the Aggies a demonstration of ball handling. That is called against Bradley. That's 3 of them. Barker on the free throw lane for the Wildcats. Kentucky leading 45-34. 3 minutes and 37 seconds to play in the NCAA championship game. For the national championship, Barker, one free throw shoots, good. Barker connects 46-34, and Kentucky equals their longest lead of the game, 12 points. Joe Bradley comes out of the lineup, and he's replaced by Keith Smith, a sophomore from Oklahoma City who stands 5 feet 9 inches tall. Yates gives the ball into Smith, who brings it in the front part of the court over to Pilgrim. He sets, doesn't shoot, although he's wide open. Over to MacArthur. In the pivot, it goes to Shelton. He spins around there, breaks in. Hirsch from the front. Yates gets the pass, shoots a one-hander. That's good. Oklahoma gets its second field goal with 3 minutes and 20 seconds to play in the half. In the front part of the court to Jones, who holds that ball. Once twice, then flips her over to Barker, over to Beard on the far side of the court. Over to Line. Line holds the ball over his head, then dribbles out, flips her over to Beard. In the pivot, it goes to Jones off the head of the circle. Jones holds the ball over his head, pivots and breaks the line under the basket. Jim missed one, breaking in under there. He missed one, 46-36. Still the score with a 10-point lead for Kentucky. Exactly 3 minutes remain in the game. Pass goes in on the side of MacArthur. Over to Shelton. He breaks for the basket and falls on the floor. No walking, though. They're going to call a jump ball as Line and Jones both move in and tie him up. Jones jumping with Shelton in the Aggies' offensive court. Have Curtis out for the toss. There it is. They both go in flight. Beard takes the ball off the hands of MacArthur. Flips her over to Barker to Hirsch, who moves past the 10-second line for Kentucky. Hirsch sets her up on this near side of the court. Moves out. Hands her over to Barker, who pivots, cuts to his left, protects that ball, flips her into Jones, batted out of his hands, and he's fouled by Yates from the rear. First one called against 6'4" Vernon Yates from the rear on Wawa Jones, who will have one shot coming for the Wildcats. Beard and Barker both move back into the double safety as 5'10" Norm Pilgrim moves back near the midcourt stripe for the Aggies. The ball will be in play, 46-36, the Wildcats. 2.5 minutes to play. The free throw no good by Jones. Comes out of there, rebounded by Line. He whips her over to Jones, who holds the ball temporarily, then flips her out in the front lines to Beard. He takes her over to Barker. Pivots, gives her over to Hirsch, who bounds that ball and flips her right back to Beard, back to Hirsch. Hirsch on the far side, comes out, then hands her over to Barker again, who cuts to his right, flips her over to Beard, back to Barker, still out deep in the front lines, over to Jones, who fakes a hand off to Barker, then holds the ball, gives her over to Jim Line, along the head of the circle, a shuffle pass, over to Hirsch. Barker breaks for the basket. Hirsch holds that ball, though, then flips her out to Beard, who holds the ball over his head, flips her over to Jones. Kentucky still playing possession ball with the Aggies now. Over to Beard, to Line, who comes out in the front lines, gives her over to Barker, to Beard. A hook in the pivot to Jones, goes on the floor. As Yates throws Jones on the floor, he goes right diving in there with him. And there's a foul called in there, or a jump. Let's see. It's a jump ball. Yates throws out. Jones throws out to jump from the Wildcats' offensive court. Have Curtis out for the toss as they jockey for position along the alley. There's a toss to tip. It bounds on the floor. The scramble for the ball is Shelton. Picks it up. Moves into the front part of the court. Gives it to Keith. Kentucky leading 46-36. 1 minute and 40 seconds to play. Over to MacArthur, who pivots out in the front lines. It goes. Barker bats down. A shot by MacArthur. Picked up by Jim Line. He races in. The ball batted out of his hands on the line. He pivots, takes that one-hand shot at the head of the circle. Into the rim. Bounds up once, twice, no good. Barker tips it up once, twice, no good. Yates takes it off. Line takes it away from Yates, and a jump ball in the Kentucky offensive court. 46-36 the score. Kentucky leading by 10 points. 1 minute and 29 seconds in the championship game. Line with Yates in the offensive court for the jump. The tip goes over to Hirsch, who moves off to his left. Flips her over to Beard, to Barker, to the right, and on the side of Jones, who pivots, moves out of there. Flips her out deep in the front lines again to Barker, over to Beard. And on the far side, it goes to Hirsch. Hirsch dribbles out along the front line, cuts over to his right, gives her over to Barker. A bounce fake pass over to Beard, then a cut over to Line in the corner to Jones, who's way off the pivot now. Jones fakes one. Yates stabs for the ball. Jones quickly unloads over to Jim Line, who breaks right down the alley just as he crosses the foul line. Foul is called against the Aggies on Gail MacArthur. MacArthur of the Aggies charged with his first personal foul, and lefty Jim Line's on the free throw lane for Kentucky. The Wildcats, let's see, they're not surrendering possession of the ball for the free throw. They're going to take it outside court. They're not shooting with 1 minute and 4 seconds to play. Kentucky 46, the Aggies 36. Beard, a high pass into Jones, who takes it right at the 10-second line, moves into the head of the circle. Smith comes in from the rear. Keith Smith is called from the side, fouling off the side of Wawa Jones. Kentucky still not shooting with 1 minute and 1 second to play. Beard out to put the ball in play for Kentucky. Flips her in on the high pass over to Hirsch. Hirsch moves up still in the backcourt, past the 10-second line, cuts over to his right, flips her over to Jones. Jones fakes one to his right, then whips over to Beard in the front court. Beard cuts to his left, flips her over to Jim Line. Line hands to Jones. Jones fakes a break for the basket, then puddles up, pivots, gives it to Beard. Over to Hirsch. Hirsch holds that ball out in front of him, way out deep near the midcourt stripe, but doesn't shoot, doesn't make an attempt. Over to Beard. To Line, over to the right. The ball batted out of the Line's hands and out of bounds by MacArthur. The whistle will go out to Kentucky. Wow Jones out to put the ball in play over to Beard to Barker. Jones breaks for the basket. Barker pivots, gives it over to Beard to Hirsch. Still out deep in the front lines. 30 seconds to play. Beard holds the ball over to Hirsch. Hirsch pivots to his right. Moves out on the front lines now with the ball. Pivots back and forth, gets himself free as he finishes his dribble near the midcourt stripe. He flips her over to Beard, blows that ball over his head, then breaks by on the side of Pilgrim, flips the ball over to Barker. Kentucky still freezing that ball and keeping it away from the Aggies. Noted for their own game. Over the line, in the corner. Line had a chance to cock that left arm. Moved out, flipped her over to Hurston. The pivot to Jones. Over the line. He's tripped and knocked on the floor as he breaks in for the basket by Pilgrim. A move in to cut up the gap on Line. Line fell over his feet and the foul is on Pilgrim. Pilgrim charged with his first foul of the game. And Kentucky's going to shoot it. Jim Line on the free throw lane and only 5 seconds to play. The Wildcats leading 46-36. This will probably be the last shot of the ball game. And Line misses it, comes off there, rebounded by Shelton. He flips over on the far side. 1 second to play as Yates shoots and drops the ball on the floor. The game ends. The Wildcats are the defending champions. Wad Jones runs up and takes the ball away from Pilgrim. He wants that ball for his own. He grabs it, and boy, do they deserve it. The Wildcats have made a tremendous demonstration. We've got the man here that we want to talk with, Captain Alex Souza. Al, how do you feel, boy?
Well, I want to say to all people in Lexington, we're going to bring home the bacon to you, and we'll be in sometime next Monday before we have to go back to New York. And I know that your support back home as well as brought us through, and we're glad that we won. And I hope to see you people soon. Thank you, Clyde.
Thanks a million, Al, and good luck. That was Alex Groza of the Wildcats, who the minute the game was over, rushed over here to say hello to everyone around through central Kentucky. We want to thank Al a million. Al did quite a tremendous job here tonight in Seattle, Washington. Hank Iba, who's rated among the top coaches in the nation, says that Bob Harris, his center, is the greatest college defensive player that he's ever seen and probably of all times. Well, it takes an equally good center to score against him. Groza racked up 28 points against Bob Harris of the Aggies. Almost enough by himself, only short by 8 points, defeating the entire Aggie team who played their slow, deliberate ball, scored their usual 36 points, but were unable to hold the high-flying Wildcats who romped through with a 10-point win at 46-36. Kentucky 46, the Aggies 36, and we wind up the championship game, the second consecutive championship for the Kentucky Wildcats, and they equal for the first time. Let's see, I got that thing here someplace. We're in the midst of doing a little chatting there, and the officials moved up to get our ballot in the voting for the most valuable player in the NCAA tournament. This, of course, includes the tournament play in the East and the West. Well, while we're waiting for the presentation of the trophy and the most valuable player awards, the people begin to file out of the pavilion here in Seattle, Washington, and they're still jockeying around for position in the front part of the court with the Kentucky Wildcats still out there. Let's see, the Wildcats line up to the far side, so we're going to try and squeeze out of here and get out on the floor. Stan, do we have enough cable to make it out there, do you think? About 15 feet. Well, that's unreal. We'll be back in just a moment for the individual scoring statistics. But right now, we're going to try and squeeze our way through the crowd here, get out and try and have some kind of a talk with the defending champions and the Wildcats who've taken their second championship of the NCAA. Well, that's the end of it. We're standing right here. We got a good enough signal to get Hum's a yes-no. Here, Hump, how you feel, boy?
Well, I think, Carl, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to Kentucky. I tell you, these cats really scrapped tonight. I tell you, they were ready.
Something to be proud of.
Boy, they are. I'm telling you, they really scrapped their guts out here tonight. And they've been talking about this thing for 3 days, and they said they just absolutely couldn't go home losers. They just want to win this thing, and I tell you, this Alex Groza was magnificent tonight.
I think you can say that for 5 or 6 others.
Boy, that's right. I tell you, it's nothing but scrap out here won this whole thing tonight.
Oh, thanks a million, boy, for running over here. Humsy Essen, the manager of the Kentucky team, he came over and gave you a pretty complete story on how the championship game went here tonight. It was strictly a case of too much scrap for the Oklahoma A&M Aggies. Kentucky fought them completely off their feet and emerged the championship. Right now, here in the center of the court, in the pavilion, in the Seattle, Washington, they're announcing the individual presentation of the NCAA champs. We're going to get a guy over here we think played a terrific game. Wah, how you feel?
I feel wonderful, Claude.
Well, I think you played one of the most beautiful ball games I've ever seen a forward play, if you don't mind me saying it in your presence.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm glad to close the season that way.
Well, what do you think of the Aggies? Let me ask you that.
I think they have a good team, a great ball-handling team. I don't think they shoot enough. That's one thing wrong.
That's what makes the difference, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Wallace, what do you think? What do you contribute our victory to tonight?
I think it was just a bunch of hustle and fight, and everybody wanted to win. It's a long plane ride home, if we lose.
It sure is, isn't it? Well, thanks a million for stopping by. That was Wah Jones. Well, we've had a chance to talk with two guys who contributed a tremendous amount to this Kentucky win here in Seattle tonight. And that's Wah Jones and Alex Groza. Groza, as we said a moment ago, racked up 28 points against Bob Harris, who was rated by his own coach as one of the greatest and one of the most outstanding defensive centers of all time. Well, there's no doubt about it. Big Al Groza proved to the world that he is truly great, racking up 28 points against Bob Harris. Doug Wilson, the Big Ten commissioner, and also the Secretary-Treasurer of the NCAA, is making the individual presentations in the very center of the floor, making them to the Oklahoma A&M Aggies. The pavilion has thinned out a little bit, and there's the introduction for Hank Iba. The photographer snapped as Hank Iba moves out to get his watch. Standing off to our left is the Kentucky Wildcats. We're going to wait until they get their watches, and we're going to signal them to come over here because we want to talk with each and every one of them. They got Hank Iba to come out with his captain, Bob Harris, to receive the runners-up trophy in the NCAA tournament, which was held here in Seattle, Washington. The newsreel cameras clicked at Hank Iba. Bob Harris stepped back, and the round of applause for the runners-up, Oklahoma A&M, who have now finished second in the nation. Well, Kentucky seems to have proved to the world, after they lost to St. Louis, the Aggies knocked off St. Louis twice, and now Kentucky has come out to give the Aggies a resounding 10-point defeat, 46-36. The watch has now been presented to Walt Hirsch, and there's the presentation to Wah Jones, and the presentation to Dale Barnstable. Comes out and moves over to the right. To receive those watches, there's Al Bruno, who's already taken quite a riding over the NIT watch he has. The boys coming out on the plane, they've all been kidding about Bruno, about wearing his sleeve out, looking at that new NIT watch. Ralph Beard and Jim Line receive their NCAA championship watches. Cliff Parker of Kentucky, who gets a nice hand as a tribute for his tremendous ball handling and defensive hawking today. And listen to this for Groza. Groza has completely wowed him here. The introduction for Rod Day and the presentation of his watch. Johnny Stow comes from the Kentucky lineup to receive his watch. There's no doubt in the minds of people here, the greatest center, and that is Alex Groza. Humsey Essen moves out to get his watch. Humsey talked an awfully good game from the bench for Kentucky. Well, Harry Lancaster, the head freshman and assistant to Coach Adolph Rupp. There's Rupp, introduction of the NCAA watch here in Seattle. And they move down now for the presentation of the NCAA trophy. Here's for Alex Groza, and here's Coach Adolph Rupp coming into the center of the court now. Just on the other side of the basketball court from us, Doug Wilson moves out. Again, the movies all move in with the newsreels taking the pictures, the presentation of the championship trophy to Coach Adolph Rupp of Kentucky, who's led his team to the second straight national championship, and his captain, Alex Groza. The presentation being made by Secretary-Treasurer Doug Wilson of the NCAA. Coach Adolph Rupp takes it, gives a big smile, holds her up for his captain to admire, Alex Groza, and Groza moves over, and he's going to say a few words. Groza, with his usual poise in the center of the floor, tells them how glad that the Kentucky Wildcats have been to appear here in Seattle, and they only hope that they can come back again in the very, very near future. The Kentucky Wildcats off to our left and right at the head of the foul circle in what proves to be the winning offensive court. shake hands, crowd around, hugging a trophy there. And the newsreels and the movies all moved in again to get the pictures for the Kentucky Wildcats. And now here's the expected announcement. Let's see. Groza, the most valuable player. Alex Groza has just been voted for the second consecutive year the most valuable player in the NCAA tournament. Alex Groza, the captain of the Kentucky Wildcats, who's walked away with the trophy for the second consecutive year. So Kentucky walks off again with the NCAA championship, and they also walk off with the individual player star, Alex Groza. The Wildcats leave off to our left now, and they head madly for the dressing room. They want to get down there and get dressed and get a little bit fresher than they have been right now, because they've played a tremendous, hard-fought ball game. Well, right now, we'll work our way back in here to the broadcast booth, just off on the side of Edmondson Pavilion here in Seattle, Washington. Well, the individual scoring honors on the game, high point man, by quite a stretch, has been Alex Groza, whom, as we told you, threw in a total of 28 points against 6'7" Bob Harris of Oklahoma A&M. Groza had his 28 points, mostly from the field. He had 3 field goals in the second half, matched that with 6 field goals in the first half. And at the free throw lane, he had 3 out of 4 in the first half and 4 for 4 in the second half. A total of 28 points for Alex Groza, 7 free throws and 9 field goals. Second place honors for Kentucky are jointly held by Jim Line and Cliff Barker. Line had 2 field goals, 1 for 2 at the free throw lane, and Cliff Barker had 1 field goal and 3 for 3 on the free throw lane, a total of 5 points. The other scoring for the Wildcats, what might be third place honors, are held by Dale Barnstable, Ralph Beard, and Wawa Jones. All of them have 3 points. Jones, 1 field goal, 1 for 2 at the free throw lane. Ralph Beard had 1 field goal and 1 for 2 at the free throw line, and Dale Barnstable, 1 for 1 in the charity line and 1 field goal for a total of 3 points. Walt Hirsch had 1 field goal for 2 points to round out the scoring for the Kentucky Wildcats at 46. For the Oklahoma A&M Aggies, high point honors with 10 points belong to Jack Shelton. Shelton, the reserve center who took over when regular Bob Harris committed his 5th personal foul after only shortly over 3 minutes of play in the second half, racked up 10 points on only 2 field goals. His deadliness was at the free throw lane, where he missed only 1 in 7 attempts. Or rather, 1 in 7 attempts, for a total of 6, adding that to 2 field goals and 10 points. Second place honors for the Aggies are divided between J.L. Parks and Bob Harris with 7 points. Harris, off Groza tonight, had only 3 field goals and 1 free throw for 7 points. Parks had 2 field goals and 3 free throws for his 7 points. In the other scoring for the Aggies, Joe Bradley had 3 points, all of them at the free throw lane. Vernon Yates had 4 points, 2 field goals. Tom Jackwood had 1 point. Gail MacArthur had 2 with no field goals. Norm Pilgrim had 2 points and no field goals. Well, the Aggies, noted for the defensive club, the Kentucky Wildcats, I believe, with Coach Adolph Rupp's system, have shown them something of a new type of defense. The Aggies racked up only 2 field goals in the second half of the game. 2 field goals were scored by the Aggies in the last half against the Kentucky Wildcats. The Aggies scored only 16 points in the second half of the game, while the Wildcats were scoring 19. Kentucky outscored them 25-20 in the first half of the game and went 10 points in the lead at 46-36 to rack up their second consecutive NCAA title. And Kentucky is now, with Oklahoma A&M, the only 2 teams to have ever won 2 NCAA national championships. Before we say goodnight for Seattle, we want to remind you to watch your youngsters' teeth for signs of decay. As an aid to firm, healthy teeth, give them Dixie ice cream often. This nutritious dairy food contains generous quantities of calcium, which is essential for strong bones and teeth. Serve Dixie ice cream. It's a favorite with young and old alike. It's the cream of the bluegrass. Dixie ice cream. And before we say goodbye, we want to remind you of our other sponsors, which we think are both just about perfect. Awfully swell people. Because tonight, Purcell's has paid tribute to the department managers who work behind the scenes of a smooth-working organization. It's impossible for Purcell's to pay tribute to all of its employees. But that doesn't mean that they're any the less appreciated, for they realize that the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And Purcell's believes it has a very strong chain in every instance. Excellent department heads, fine salespeople, quality merchandise, and wanted extra services. Visit Purcell's often, won't you? Purcell's main aim is to serve you properly and well. Well, basketball fans, here's something that we wanted to hold until last. We don't want to sign off tonight before we check the records because we think Alex Groza has cracked some more NCAA records. Going into tonight's game, Kentucky needed only 19 points to break the three-game total, which was held by the Aggies when they won the tournament in 1945, defeating Utah, Arkansas, and NYU. They scored 179 points. Well, Kentucky has shattered that record by scoring over the necessary 19 points, running over it by a matter of almost 16 points. Alex Groza needed 22 points tonight to break Bob Curlin's scoring record in the NCAA, the three-game total of 76 points. Groza, with his 28 points, has destroyed Bob Curlin's record. He destroyed the record by better than 6 points. Groza has scored 82 points in his three NCAA games. Groza needed 10 field goals to break Curlin's record of 30 in three games, and Groza ended up with a total of 9 field goals, just one short of the record which was held by Bob Curlin. Groza needed 6 free throws tonight to break the record held by Jack Underman of Ohio State when he hit 18 free throws in 3 games back in 1946. Groza tonight destroyed that record when he connected for 7 free throws. So Groza tonight destroyed 2 records. The Kentucky Wildcats knocked off another NCAA record. The Wildcats have altogether destroyed now, as a unit and as a team and as individuals, 5 NCAA records. We have a couple of other reminders we want to pass along before we say goodnight, seeming to try to squeeze in a little bit of everything. We want to remind you particularly about the 10-inch dinner plate with the ivory background and the gold bland with a picture of the present Kentucky basketball team, including the players, the coaches, and the manager with the names of each one. It's overglazed for permanency, too, and the dinner plate, suitable for display or dinner dishes, the cost is only $3. And the dinner dish with the picture of the Kentucky Wildcats 48-49 NCAA championship team and sold exclusively in Lexington, by Purcell's, in the basement, that costs only $3. Well, basketball fans through in central Kentucky, it's 20 minutes of 2 Sunday morning. In case any of your friends have dropped off to sleep tonight about 1 o'clock, this afternoon, we should say, Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, WKLX will give you a complete rebroadcast of the Kentucky Aggies championship basketball game of the National Collegiate Athletic Association. Remember, 1 o'clock, WKLX for this broadcast again, transcribed and played back completely for any of your friends or any of the other sports fans who may have missed a portion of it because of this rather irregular hour due to the 2-hour time lag between Pacific and Central Standard Time. So if you want to hear the game again or hear spots that you may have missed, tune in WKLX this afternoon at 1 o'clock. That's Sunday afternoon. And we want to remind you, too, of the Junior Chamber of Commerce testimonial dinner for the Wildcats. That's in the Lafayette Hotel. It'll be April the 11th. That's at 6:30, and the tickets are on sale, only $5 each, at Purcell Service Desk.
Today's broadcast is brought to you by ClassicBaseballBroadcasts.com, your one-stop destination for thousands of authentic, vintage radio game broadcasts, interviews and highlights. Red Barber, Mel Allen, Vin Scully, Ernie Harwell, Kurt Godey are just a few of the Ford Frick Award-winning voices. There are hundreds more that will bring back childhood memories from back in the day when the game was always on. From the crack of the bat to the roar of the crowd, relive the moments that made Baseball America's favorite pastime. Get started for free and step back in time listening to baseball's greatest moments.